Welcome back. Good to see everyone. And not sure what's going on here on the sides, but just give me a moment, everyone. All right. So, welcome back to Through Glass Darkly Radio on United Public Radio. The intro music was Mark of the Doomslayer by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. And I want to introduce my guest. So, folks, I think we're expecting Josh Cutchin. He was sick today. So, instead, I have a guest who graciously agreed to come on to the show in lieu of Josh. And his name is Joe Montaldo. Joe Montaldo is founder and national director of ICAR, International Community for Alien Research. ICAR has close to 7,000 abduction cases on file. Mr. Montaldo has been a researcher investigator of alien contact, abductions, and experiencers for over 20 years. He is owner of this very network, the Paranormal Radio, and the host of Wake Up USA, a UFO study talk show. He is also a board member representing contactees for Dr. Michael Sala's Exopolitics Institute. So with that, Joe, welcome, my friend.
Oh, hello, people of Earth. Give me your money. No, I'm just kidding. Well, no, I'm not actually giving you money, but how y'all's already doing? Oh, nice to see you, Sean. I've never been on Sean's show before. It's kind of weird, people. I only see Sean on one night, so, and that's we don't talk about that on these shows. But y'all come join us on Friday nights. We hang out. So let me correct a few things. ICAR now has 170,000 members with 140,000 cases. Now, when we say case, ladies and gentlemen, this isn't okay. It's hard to explain, but all of our cases have similarities. They have to cross. We actually could say cross contaminate, but anyway. So let's say that Joe over here has seen this, and this. We expect to hear that in other cases. For us, it's not really a contact if it's a single case. We don't. Most of the time, we consider those liars. Not always. I don't want to offend anybody, but really, most of the time, we're kind of like, well, we have this case. We have 25,000 in this case, or 15,000 in this case. So, like in Grays, and some of the things that go in Grays from birth to death, that I think it's 70, 80,000 cases, 70,000 cases. They have a lot of similarities. I mean, there's a lot of things in those cases when you read, you're like, wow. And remember, we don't make any of this stuff public. We only make 40% of our abduction criteria public. The other 60 stays inside the organization, and not even everybody inside the organization knows. It's a closely guarded secret. And the reason why is if it ever gets out, I'll never know who's lying and telling the truth. If I was to allow everything we know to get out, you could fool every researcher. It wouldn't matter who they were. You'd fool every researcher. Every researcher would think, oh, we got a legit contactee. Now, I'll tell you a little secret. We got something coming out in a couple months. Hopefully, I've been working a deal with this TV network since pre-Katrina. So we were going to do it, and then Katrina came. I mean, COVID came. I'm sorry. COVID came, and then right after COVID, we're going to do it, and then I don't know, some other stuff came, and then some other stuff. So we finally inked the contract. They already had done 2 episodes. So what they're doing is they're reenacting abduction cases, and I'm the narrator of what's going on. So you'll see my face sometimes, or you'll hear my voice most of the time. You'll see my face every once in a while. So we did the pilot and the other one. We're going to do 6 more. And they're going to release them. And I'll tell you, I'm not going to tell you the network tonight, but it's a big, huge network. And it's one of the, pay me networks. So we'll be on this. It's some really good stuff. All these have been investigated through the yin yang. So these are good, solid, hardcore cases that you're going to have a hard time fighting with. And the reason why is they're going to go through the case and react whatever happens. And I'm going to explain to you why this is probably real. Like when they drug Sean out of his room the other day by his feet, and he's screaming, his wife's going, make sure you're paying for this time. No, just kidding. Hey, that's the way to go. You should wives, husbands, whoever you are out there. And one of the other things when I first got in this field, God, so long ago, I can't even remember. When we used to hear cases, we rarely seen a male abductee. It was like 1 out of every 500. It was actually it's more than that. It's like 1 out of every 5,000. And I was like,
when did you start this? When did you start this?
40 years ago.
Okay, I'll let you finish.
No, but we can switch. No, I'm good at switching around. So first off, so I'll tell you, Sean knows I was in the Navy, and while I was in the Navy, these pilots are crazy, by the way, but they'd come in telling me, oh, they saw this. I'm like, you're so full of BS. I said, what are you, smoking marijuana when you're 40,000, 80,000 feet in the air, cruising at Mach 2? I bet you are seeing things, man. But they would insist. So I worked many line checks over the years. And the line check is when we're on the ground, not on ship. And I've worked many of them. And there's never been any pilots who said they haven't saw something. I always thought that was interesting. Every pilot I interviewed said they saw something. Now, the Navy back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s made it illegal to you could lose your pilot's degree or your pilot's license if you came in and said you saw a UFO. They might pull you, ground you. Now they actually are required to report anything they see. Today it's a different world. Though we got drones in the air, we got all kind of stuff flying around. We got apparently weird asteroids going through, dropping things out in space while it's going through. So it's a lot of weirdness going on, a lot of stuff to keep up with. So, but anyway, so I heard all that. Well, I got out the Navy. I'm at work one day. This woman walks up to me and starts telling me about her alien abduction. I look at her like, first of all, why are you even telling me that? You don't know me from Bean, buddy. So I'm like, okay. I just kind of let it slide. So I'm at my dentist's office to get my dentist work done. I've known this woman for 30 years, or at least 25 years, and she's doing my teeth. She says, Joe, I had this weird experience. She goes off on this thing, and I'm looking at her like, what the bleep, man? It just flipped me out. So over the course of the next 2 years, 20, 25, maybe 30 different women came up and told me about their experience. I'm like, do I have a thing on my back saying, please tell me you've been abducted? Like, because to this day, I still don't know why. And it never fails. You can ask my wife, my friends. We'll be out having dinner. We'll be in the middle of something. It's a little different now because I'm a little, my face is around a little bit and our organization around a little bit. But for a long, long time, I could never figure out why these people were walking up and telling me this. So eventually, you got to remember, guys and girls, I thought they were crazy. Really. So I don't know. There was a thing
seriously, that's a legit reaction to have, especially if they're just coming out of you unbidden. Yeah. Like, they didn't even, you weren't even talking about those things. They just came up and spontaneously told you that, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. And I'm just like, what the hell? So then I was sitting down one night talking to my wife and a friend of mine, and I started realizing that some of the stuff they were told me was the same. So, and then I realized these people didn't know each other because we're different places. I was like, you know what? I'm going to look into this. Maybe the government's got something to do with this. So I started looking into it. Man, I'm not into it. 2 years, I done found 1,800 people I'm talking to. And so I joined MUFON. I was friends with Walt Anders. And Walt said, look, we don't do this kind of work. Why don't you take a crew and do it underneath MUFON, meaning to keep it out of MUFON because, back then, alien abduction was a bad. Matter of fact, alien abduction was a word, so I changed it. No, not like it used to be. We actually kind of changed it around. And I'll tell you about that in a little while. But so Walt said, just take a group. So we get down, we get a group. We found 12, 14,000 people. So we start doing a comparison study. We get it down to compression to 5,000 people who had all these similar things. So I bring it to Walt Anders. Walt is like, wow. He said, we can't release it. I'm like, why? He said, it'll ruin MUFON. He said, nobody wants to talk about it. And he was right. Nobody wanted to talk about alien abduction. This was back, I don't know, 88 maybe. I'd been out the Navy for a year or two. So this had to be around 88. And he said, nobody wanted to talk about it. And I was like, okay. I understood that, so he pushed it. So then I started sending stuff in and out of MUFON, and I was getting no response. It was like the black hole of Calcutta. Nothing, everything went in, nothing came. By the way, it's still this way today. You can go ask a lot of members. And so I'm sitting there thinking to myself, what can I do to change this? So I was a research specialist for MUFON, actually. So I gave my resignation nice and peacefully. Got with some friend of mine. We were doing a lot of stuff on the internet, talking to people, chatting with people, doing stuff. And we opened a support group called UFO Paranormal. What was it? UFO Paranormal Phenomena. UFO Paranormal Phenomena group. Group lasted for 10 years or more. It's still around today. So while I was there, we were recruiting members, and somewhere about halfway in, I met this guy named Ariel St. Sinclair. And he starts telling me about all this crazy. And this guy was lying through his teeth, man. He was just, and the more I listened to him, the more I realized there needed to be somewhere for these people to go. So I got with all my friends and fellow hosts that were doing the thing, which at the time was about 200 of us, and we formed the International Community for Alien Research. So we started working on it. We recruited about 100 directors around the world, and we just started digging. So by about 8 years into it, we had a pretty good solid abduction criteria with I think we're around 35,000 cases, 45,000 cases, and we're working
and this is worldwide. This is worldwide, not
this is
just
worldwide,
US.
yeah, not just U.S.
Yeah.
And then Larry Hatch, who owns U Database, Larry Hatch. I don't even know if the database is up anymore, but
I need you to connect you. I need to connect you with somebody, Joe, because I know a guy who's working with the Hatch database. He's using
Oh,
AI
is he?
to find all sorts of things. Yeah, well, we'll connect afterward. He doesn't want his name.
So Larry Hatch's database goes from 1940 to 2000. So when you look at this database, you see little spreads of UFOs. Well, as time goes on, you start to see each year, you start to see trails. I mean, you can literally see that there's places they group up and cross the Atlantic in certain places, Pacific in certain places. They cluster around certain places. So what we did was we took his database and our abduction base and put them together. And let me tell you what, it was like a freaking awakening. I mean, we was just stunned. So we now have not only evidence from the people talking, we had physical evidence of people seeing UFOs in the same places where we were having mass groups of abductions. It was phenomenal. I mean, I actually woke up and said, okay, we got something real. I can actually go into the press and do something real. Well, at that time, a gentleman who owned Stardust Radio who had asked me to come host Wake Up USA, a UFO study. And they had all kind of famous people going. That's where I met a lot of people from. And we were there for a little while, and then and our database was growing, and more people were coming in. Of course, he got upset because a friend of mine gave me Pioneer Radio in Hong Kong. And Hong Kong, that actually Pioneer Radio was the base for the UFO Paranormal Radio Network. But I told Jeff, I said, look, he gave us this network. There's 200,000, 300,000 people listening in Hong Kong. We should add Wake Up USA too. Well, he got mad at me and said no. And I was like, why would you say no to that many listeners? Well, it's your network. I said, so what? I'm on your network. It's your show. I don't own the show. It's your show. You own it. I said, I'll sign a contract. Nope. He didn't want to do it. So that's when UFO Undercover started. That particular, it was 21, 22 years ago. No, where are we? 24. So it's 25, 26 years ago. And from that point, the UFO Paranormal Radio was born. And we added a bunch of our directors who were doing research into the network, and they started putting their research on. And it was good for us because we needed a place to put out research data, because you can't rely on, because don't get me wrong, I love George Norton. I talked to Art Bell, but I've been in Coast to Coast 6 times. I think it's a great place, but you can't rely on them to get your data out. So we started this network so we could start putting our data out, and it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew, and then it split and it grew some more. And then it came into what it is today, which is entirely different, ladies and gentlemen. There is UFO Paranormal Radio, it does exist, but there's also United Public Radio. So it's a little bit different than it used to be. But anyway, getting back to what we were talking about. So we're getting data by 2005. We're close to 100,000 cases. And you have to remember, ladies and gentlemen, for every one case we consider was good, we went through anywhere from 5 to 10 other cases. It was ridiculous how much crap was being sent to us and how many people were calling us on the phone. Oh, well, this happened to me. And you're like, oh, no. And then you start asking them hardcore questions and they get upset. And I'm like, you don't have to get upset. I mean, we're here to get to the truth. We want you to get to the truth. We want to know what's happening to you. And so at some point along the way, I see some bad girl here. So anyway, at some point along the line, we decided that we formed the abduction criteria complete, and it gets added to every year. But and that was what we were going to use to start determining who was lying and who was telling the truth. So if there wasn't more than at least 12 contacts and on any type of alien, we ignored it. And there was other researchers out there who were picking it up. So it wasn't like we were just completely kicking it to the curb, but there were other groups looking at that, like Charles Hall's Tallest Whites. We didn't get into that until much later on when, I was sitting in Mississippi talking to a state trooper about a sighting they had down here. When this state trooper calls me from Las Vegas telling me about these tall white things walking around. This was live, by the way. He called me while they were in the casino, and he was talking, and he said, you don't have to believe me. And he hands it over to the other guy. The other cop says, I'm watching these things walk. These are 2 state troopers, 2 Nevada state troopers. And if this would have got out, they would have lost their careers. I mean, they would have been kicked off the force, no pension, no nothing. So they were taking a big risk calling me. So I got with him after, and we got into great deals. Well, they turned me on to some limo drivers and some taxi drivers and some other people who had seen it, and 3 other casinos. So we ended up having 50, 60 witnesses to this. Well, that changes things. These people, they're not connected to each other. They're, one's a limo driver, one's a cook, one's a dealer. They don't even know each other. So those are the kind of cases I like. So that actually helped to bring that in. And then that added another type of alien to the group, which, by the way, doesn't fit into the norm of the regular humans, greys, and reptilians. They're just outside of that. They're here for totally different
Do you think
reasons.
the tall white thing is a real thing, or do you think it's just a story
I
from
did.
Charles
Okay. So
Hall?
in the very beginning, I thought Charles, so I voice stressed Charles. He believed this beyond any doubt, but I didn't
Yeah.
in the first, for the first 4 interviews. And I was very respectful because the guy, because I liked him and he was military. And I'm respectful of anybody who will put their ass on the line like we did for whatever reason they're doing it. So
Hmm.
I said, Charles, I said, dude, I know you believe this. I said, I can feel that you believe this as much as you believe your wife sitting next to you at the moment. I said, but you're not convincing me, man. I said, and if I'm gonna put my ass on the line for you, I need convincing. And then a couple of weeks later is when the state troopers called me. And I was like, ooh, so now we got 3 witnesses and then 5 witnesses and seven. So I called him back about 2 years later, after I had about 40 witnesses on trial. And I said, Charles, you might be right. And I said, now we've got almost 50 witnesses from all over Vegas who have seen these things. Plus, we had also 3 military people from Area 53 call in and said, yes, they know they were there. So I got to thinking, and maybe there is. So I put about 5 investigators on it because I didn't have time for it myself. And there's, by the way, this is an ongoing investigation even today. One thing that's funny about ICAR, when we start an investigation or a project or a report, we keep them for life. Like the blood type studies and all that, they're ongoing. If you go to our site right now, I think there's 10 or 20 of them on there.
Can you say it's just icar.com, or what's
It's
the so people know?
icar1.com. Yes.
icar1.com.
Yeah, because the damn Indian Council for
icar1.com.
something agricultural stuff has got to post the original. And I got to tell you, we made a boo boo when we got that acronym, because when we searched it, we waited till after we named it and then searched it. Don't ever do that, people. They had so many icars, we didn't even want to do it. They still do have too many today. They got the racing committee and all kinds of stuff. It's for some reason it was a quite popular thing, but we started looking, and the more we looked, the more we found. The more we looked, the more we found. But so in the very beginning, I thought the Greys. I was ignorant, people, so give me a break here. I thought the Greys worked for the human aliens and the reptilian aliens, and they were doing their biddings and blah 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 blah. So the more cases we got, the more we realized, no, that was not right. The Greys were doing the majority of abductions, and both the reptilians and the humans were scared crapless of the Greys. Even the little 3-foot Greys they were scared of. So we got many cases where the lady saying that she's sitting in the stand with the stirrups, and the Greys standing there looking, and one of the reptilians walking. And one day she said, every time you see him, the reptilian puts his head down and puts his eyes up. So do the human. And humans and reptilians are both. An alpha male reptilian, he's 8 feet, 700 pounds. I mean, his arms bigging around in a whole Grey's body. Same thing with the human aliens. Oh no, heads down, eyes up. And that's just a sign of respect and fear. Obviously, the mental abilities of Greys are far beyond the other 2 branches. And we know their ships are organic when the other 2s are still switching click. When I say switch and click, ladies and gentlemen, I mean like ours. We have switches and stuff we have to hit and buttons and stuff. The only difference is there's no wires on any of the reptilians or human type craft. They're just wireless. Everything goes through the air. It's or how I say that. I'm not even saying that. I don't really know how it works. We just know that there's no wires there at all. And we know on the reptilian ships, everything. I mean, on the Grey ship, the ship is alive. It's alive. It creates its own food, which is some type of blue plasma that the Greys absorb through an osmosis type thing through their skin. We know that the Greys immerse people in this stuff to make them feel better and regenerate them and stuff. We didn't know what this stuff was in the beginning. We just kept getting these people came in. They put me in this blue stuff, or we seen this blue stuff, and this went on. I mean, 3, 4, 5, 600,000, 15, 1,800 cases. I'm like, what the hell is this? So we cheat a little bit, and I'm going to tell you a little secret about us. So we'll take 50 contactees. We do this even today. We'll take 50 contactees who don't know each other. We will send them a question, and we tell them to repeat in their head over and over. So when they see the alien, it just, because they're telepathic, it just beams in their head. Most of the times, the Greys will, send an answer back. Sometimes the Greys act like, oh, I'm a proud parent. Look, my little human did some telepathy. But sometimes there is consequences for this. So we always kind of watch what kind of questions we're asking. There has been some times where they just say gave them really bad shit in their head, so the human understood that was a no-no. They want you to be telepathic. They want you to talk to them that way, but some questions, I guess, are out of bounds. And there's not many, but this has worked really good for us because we have learned a lot of things that we couldn't have learned any other way. So we keep those. And we also put how we came about the data. So so everybody knows this is how this data came to us. We didn't see it, we didn't find it, we got it this way. It works really well, and no, we don't hypnotize anybody. It's just we just let them repeat the question because we never know when somebody's going to be taken. So we tell them when they're sitting in bed, laying in bed, walking around the house, cooking dinner, whatever they're doing, just repeat the question. Because that way, as soon as they pick them up, when you see them in the face, that question's going to go right into their head.
How do you know the Greys aren't lying though with the answer?
Well, because it's instantaneous. So if the Greys like hesitated, and that was another thing we started tracking. How fast did it get back into your head? Every contactee said the same thing. It was instantaneous. It was like boom, boom. They did it. See, that's the reason we did it this way, is because we figured it would be just a response, a reflex. And that's what it was. And that's why sometimes they got in trouble, because the Greys did not mean to answer that question, but they did anyway. So then they got clear. So right there, we realized we had something. Once we knew the Greys got mad, we knew we had something. We knew we had something. And when I say something, you still are not, to me, nothing's 100% when we're talking about extraterrestrials. These are just good ways to gather knowledge. So then we look for other ways. As long as that to get, we also use our contactees. We put people in the voice stress, and we do body language, and we do a lot of things. And one of my favorite things is when we can't get an answer, we do a hypnosis. Now, I am extremely strict on hypnosis. I don't like to use it, even though I'm very good at it. I still don't like to use it. And we have other people in the organization that are so, because you got to be so careful. I've watched MUFON and other organizations, and some famous people out in this field just do the stupidest things I've ever seen. So let's say Sean tells me he had an experience in 1989 on May 5th at like noon or something. Well, that's what I'm going to ask him. I'm going to say, Sean, I want you to tell me about this experience you had on May 5th. And then I'm going to put him under, and that's all I'm going to ask him. I'm not going to ask him anything, and I'm going to have him repeat. I'm going to have him go through the whole entire experience all the way to the end. And I'm going to stop him and ask him to go backwards and repeat what he can remember going backwards. Now, remember, on the side of his head, about right here, there's going to be a voice stress meter running. So I expect when he said, oh, the alien grabbed me by the foot and dragged me through the house, I expect the meter to be on, because if it's not, and it's going, we know he's lying. No ifs, ands about it. Because no matter how to, even under hypnosis, this is an experience that's gonna generate emotions. You can't have a full blown contact and not have an emotional state about it. It's just not going to happen unless somebody hypnotized you before you went in to have the experience. So, and we see when we're talking to real contactees, that meter is all over the freaking place. I mean, it's over. It's at one point, this lady was telling me about this particular thing, and she was scared, and that freaking meter was peaked. If it could have went any higher, it would have, and it stayed peaked for a whole 15 minutes. It would not come down. And finally, I started talking her down, bringing her back to a softer place, and the meter came down with her. So we know it works. It works quite well. And then what we do is after that, we everything is videotaped and audio taped. Everything. Matter of fact, we give besides our audio, we give the contactee. We give this to him. We say, put this on your chest. I want you to have this, and you turn it on, and when you're done, you turn it off and you put it in your pocket. It's yours for life. We don't want it. We just want you to have it. We have what we need. So then we sit down with the contactee and a couple of researchers, and we formulate a line of questions that don't use words like extraterrestrials or UFOs or Greys, or we don't want it. I can't be the one who says those. He can, but I can't. So as I'm talking to people, I expect them to come back and say, hey, so they're telling me about the experience. And Joe, it looked kind of like a little gray looking bean or a little blue. Now, if you tell me it's a gray on hypnosis, you're lying, because Greys are not gray to start off with. Yes. One of the biggest secrets in the entire field is that Greys are not actually gray. Remember, I told you earlier, they absorb blue plasma through their skin. So why would they be gray? And we do know sometimes they'll be clear looking. Sometimes they have a brown tint, sometimes they're white, but those are actually different parts of the Greys. They're not actually the Greys, what we consider. So the ones that come down and get us, they're 3 foot, 5 foot, and 7 foot. And when they absorb this, they can be like almost an electric cobalt blue look, like my mic. When you first see them, it's like only glowing. And then later on, after not 2 or 3 days they haven't fed, they start kind of looking translucent, kind of clear, maybe a little gray, but kind of translucent. And it could be like a milky white or translucent to a gray. But when you see one, you know that they're not actually gray like you see on TV gray. It's not what color they are. So that helps us out in a lot of ways. And it also lets us know. And I got in big trouble. I remember this when I released the blue plasma thing. The organization was pissed at me for kind of a whole year, man. Can't believe you let that out. Such a good criteria. I said, no. People need to know. But it also brought in almost 5,000 cases because people remember having this experience. So they called in and they talked, and we found out if they were real, or if they were real, if they weren't. But it gave us another open database. It's like when we released a blood type study. It just brought in more people to help us learn, help us be part of this. But we have so much data now. We know so much about this, and we still know jack squat. People tell me all the time, y'all know more than every researcher in the field combined, which is true. That is actually a true statement. But you know what? We still know this much. I could sit here and talk to y'all for hours about what we know. But in the end, it's still not giving us the answers we want. Are they from deep space to dimensional? Okay.
Yeah, that was actually my question. Where are they from?
So, according to the Greys, reptilians, and humans, they're from this galaxy. Some people believe they're from Mars, Jupiter, Earth, and the planet that blew up. I have no idea if that's true or not. There are some things like humans are weird. Our biological clock is set to 24 and a quarter hour day, which means we're not probably from Earth naturally. I mean, Earth's biology. I mean, Earth's thing is 23 and 3/4. So we're a full, a quarter hour off. No, I'm sorry, we're a full half hour off.
It's similar to Mars, right? It's like,
yeah, so it's identical to Mars. That's the thing. Also, the optimal body temperature for humans to work in would have been what Mars's optimal temperature was 55 million years ago. Is it a coincidence? I don't know. But it's not what Earth is today or would have been in the past. So you have to stop and wonder, why is that? So that gives us a little clue that there might have been, we might have had some help getting here. Or whatever was here before us, whatever we come from, may have been interbred with something from somewhere else. I mean, there's a lot of rumors.
Maybe it's the evacuation after a cataclysm on Mars.
There might have been. And see, they talk about that. They actually have really good stories. So let me see. The Sumerians, which is one of my favorite stories. So there was a lot of Ike did a lot of kind of bad work on the translations of the Sumerians. He did a lot of good work too. I don't want to hate on him because he did some good stuff, but he did some bad stuff. Like Planet X. No Planet X is orbiting Earth at 5 times. It would have crushed us into little dusty pieces, people. Sorry. That's not good science. Maybe something coming in the size of the moon slow. Maybe could have gotten here without killing us, everybody. And that might, and anyway, a lot of people think it was a spaceship, but regardless.
Well, they're still arguing. I think even recent weeks, there was an article from a scientist, I think at Caltech, who were claiming that there potentially was a Planet 9. I grew up with 9 planets where Pluto was a planet, but let's assume
Pluto was a planet.
Pluto's a planet too, right? So they call it Planet 9 or Planet X, where it's just on a very wide elliptical orbit, so you don't see it very often. And they're still arguing about it. There's no consensus on it.
And there's a couple of things that can help you with that argument. So the Planet X theory is they come around every 3,600 years. Okay. Well, Chinese were really good astronomers. There was several actually races. The Egyptians were also really good astronomers. Well, they don't chart any planet 3,600 years ago or any time before that. So they would have seen, I mean, the thing is massive. There's no way it's getting past this without being seen. Plus, there's no disturbance to the asteroid belt, which suggests no big anything came through there. So there are some things that help us to understand probably not getting close to us. Now, it doesn't mean one doesn't exist, ladies and gentlemen. There's something out there that's tugging on the planets. They don't know what it is. So we've seen the tug now, so we know something does exist, but it's not what we've all been told about Planet X and things like that. It's something else. It's probably a big ice chunk of shit floating around in space out there. And then recently they said that we have a moon that we didn't know about, a little small moon that we didn't know about. And they said they know where it came from on planet. They show you this big crater and it came out of there. Well, that may or may not be true. I was always taught the Big Bang. There's a lot of stuff I was taught about astronomy that is now wrong. The universe isn't expanding at the same pace or the same rate, and it's not even expanding in the same directions. Damn things expanding at different rates in different places all over the place. Plus, and I asked this 40 years ago, I said, how can the Big Bang be real when we have clusters of galaxies clustered together and just sitting there? Well, first off, how did they cluster together without wiping it? I mean, we know when you get closer to the galaxy, it absorbs you, but you have just groups of them. They're not absorbing each other. They're just doing their thing. And they're not moving forward, so which you're kind of like, oh, okay. And then we found out that you told us there was no galaxies at the start. And guess what? We found that not only were they, but they were massive galaxies at the start. So we keep finding out more and more. And I'm not hating on science. I was taught as a young age, science is wrong more than it's right. But we still have to do it. And we still have to do scientific methods, a great thing for proving things. But sometimes scientists get how can I say this, dogmatic, and
Well,
they
it
don't.
could be that just the galaxy that we lived in, the universe that we live in, is just the ejecta of a white hole, right? Which is
Yeah,
just the
could
opposite
be.
side of a black hole.
Well, they talk
Right.
about that all the time. When a black hole forms here, it creates a hole, and then everything that's being sucked through is put on to the other side, back in a whole piece. Well, people, I don't know. I have not gone through a black hole yet. So when I do, and I come back, I'll be sure to tell everybody about the experience.
Or just the matter is reorganized and it just evolves into just ejected with such force and velocity that
Yes.
you have something that looks like a big bang that's not a big
On
bang.
a side note, y'all should never take one of these on a trip with you on an airplane. There's a
What
little
is that?
square. This is a mic for a whole mic stand for this thing.
Oh
Inside of here's a
yeah.
little square piece of lead that weighed it down. Both going and coming, they had to search my luggage cupboard. So
Yep.
the guy
Yep.
was like, "What is this?" I said, "It's a mic stand, dude." I said, "You see the blue thing? It fits in there." He was like, "Are you sure?" Because it's kept registering this. I said, "Well, you need to scan it and see what it is." I said, "But it's not no big bomb if that's what you're asking me." That was too funny, and both ways going and come. Thank God it wasn't in my big luggage; it was in one of my carry-ons, but it was just kind of funny. I was just telling you people because anything with any lead in the bottom defies being scanned, so it instantly sets off TSA like, "Oh my God, hey Frank, it's retarded." But anyway, getting back to what we were talking to, so there's a lot of good research on why things are coming here. There's a lot of bad research too, but so when you talk to the reptilians, or when you talk to people associated with the reptilians, they talk about Drago and a couple other systems, but when they talk about these systems, they say they're not their homeworld. That's not where they
Mm-hmm.
actually came from. So if you go back to the Sumerians in the seven creations of man, the Sumerians say that some gods came here. That's their word. Some gods came here and built two white domed cities. This is exactly, I'm repeating how the story goes word for word. So the two white domed cities, they created another race like themselves because they could not breathe the oxygen. They couldn't breathe the atmosphere on our planet. So they created a race exactly like them that could breathe oxygen and let them loose. So that race was, doing its thing, mine and doing it. And then somewhere along the line, they said, well, what the hell? We're up nipping in super beans too. Why are we out here getting our fingers dirty? And then they created what the Sumerians called the seven creations man, dog man, eagle man, all kind of stuff, just trying to create something that would be a good slave and do what they were supposed to do. So finally, they settled on something that looked a lot like we do today, maybe a little squattier, but they look like we did today. And they could plow the fields and make bead and procreate and do all that wonderful stuff. But they never questioned their masters ever. They didn't have that little section in our brain that we have today that makes us go, what the, things like that. What the hell did you just say? And back then, it's, oh, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Probably a real friendly group. Then the story goes that all of a sudden they started seeing reptilians sneaking into the villages and hey, sneaking into the villages and starting. Sorry about that, because my alarm decided something's going on in my house. But they started sneaking into the villages, stealing the women and bringing the women back pregnant. Well, the first time I heard this story, I figured, okay, these must be deformed looking children, half
Mm-hmm.
human, but that's not what it was. What it was is the children that were born were defiant. And we're like, what the hell? So the more and more then were born, more and more the reptilians were doing. Eventually, they succeeded to have enough and brought the Sumerians and ran off the aliens off the planet. Um, I think the reason they sent the Greys there, because there's no mention of the Greys before about 5,000 years ago. And the reason why is I don't think it was needed. I think what happened was once the reptilians started interfering with the humans, whatever the humans were doing, they got pissed. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, that Dogon and talk about the Nemos quite a lot, which were an amphibious reptilian race, which showed them all kind of different technologies and things. And they mapped the Draco star, the Dogon star system. Well, the Dog star system. So if you get there, the first planet, the first star is huge.
And the dog star, that's Sirius, right?
Yeah, that's
It's the
Sirius.
dog
So you get
star.
Sirius A, B, and C, and but we didn't know that. Sirius, none of these can be seen by a sight. They only can be seen by a radio telescope. So we found that Sirius A, if you took a scoop of it and you brought it to Earth, it would just fall straight through the planet. That's the mass. Well, the Dogon knew that. How the hell could they know that? They knew that.
This is the
And
tribe in Africa, right?
yeah,
Like
this is a
West
tribe
Africa.
that's in Egypt. It's above Egypt. It's living in mountains above Egypt. They think there's
Okay,
some kind
not
of
West
descendants
Africa,
of them.
right?
So their calendar is based on the Sirius. I think it's Sirius B, which is a 55.5 year orbit. But their calendar is based on it to the day. And some scientists, some scientists went there. Some archaeologists actually went there, sociologists and stuff, and went to explore them. And they started learning things like They had advanced knowledge of the human circulatory system. They actually did surgery on skulls, and the people lived. They did a lot of things that some little African tribe on the top of Africa shouldn't have been doing or shouldn't have known. Most of this data they shouldn't have known. So they tried to say that someone told them about these stars. But when you date the expedition time and the creation of radio telescope, it doesn't work out. The expedition was before the invention of radio telescope. So it couldn't have worked. They couldn't have been the one that gave them the information.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, the Dogon had advanced information about stars that we could only see with a radio telescope. And I mean, you base your calendars, even if the Dogon could see it some miraculously way, how would they know its orbit was 55.5 years? I mean, that's pretty serious knowledge. I mean, you have to be charting this and looking at this for a while. But they knew it. And still to this day, they're still alive today. And they pass their information not down by writing, but by verb.
Oral tradition.
So, and they're supposed to learn it word for word for word. Now, how true is that? I don't know. I'd have to go, time travel back to see what the original stories was. But anyway, so you have the Dogon, and now you have the Sumerians, and we now have the reptilians and the humans interbreeding with each other. So when I give lectures and I tell people, oh, you have a reptilian section, you'll be surprised how ignorant our planet is, people. I have said this in many lectures. People, oh, no, it's impossible. I said, y'all get your cell phones, look it up. I'm serious. I've actually stopped lectures and said, you know what? Take your time, get your little cell phone out, type it in, reptilian section of the brain. I said, it's what makes us what we are. Without it, we're just a useless little race that walks around and don't think about anything.
Isn't that the medulla oblongata?
Yes, and
I can't remember.
Yeah, no, I think it is a medulla. It's I'd have to pull it up to be 100% sure, but without it, we would not be who we are today. Now, it doesn't necessarily make us over aggressive or anything, but it does make us ask questions. It's part of us that we need there. So out of the blue, that's there. So we have all of this. And now remember, at this time and period on Earth, there was no Rh negative blood. There was only Rh positive. They were brown-eyed, brown-haired, brown-skinned. That's what they were. There were no mutations is what I mean. So green eyes and blue eyes are mutations, just like Rh negative is a mutation. But none of that existed back then. That came in after the fact. So we're trying to, and when you ask a scientist to tell you when Rh negative blood in, he'll go from 3,000 to 45,000 years. They just don't have a clue, man, because they can't really tell. And we don't really know what the dates of these. When you go back and look at the Sumerians and the Egyptians, their civilizations are older than what we were taught. The thing is, how much older? We know the Egyptian civilization spans at least 10,000 years, well, about 12,500 years, because of the water on the Sphinx. There's no doubt that that's water runoff on the Sphinx. It's not just that. There's other things out there that show that. We also know at that time it was a lush valley. Okay, so somebody built the Sphinx way back then, and you know what's so great about that? It only lines up with Leo at 12,500 years ago, just like the pyramids only line up. There are either 6 or 7 wonders on the planet that line up with their constellations at 12,500 years ago. What were the ancients trying to tell us? I mean, all this points backwards, not forward. So unless we want to try to see if all 7 of them line up somewhere in the future, and so far I haven't seen anybody do it. But what were they trying to? They were trying to tell us something. Was the original date they came here? Was that the date they figured it out? I mean, something happened back then that makes you wonder. So when you look at the human aliens face on, they look pretty much like we do. But when you look at them sideways, their head comes back. Their head's about this long, where ours is about like this, theirs is about like this. So there's 2 things on this planet where we've seen this. We've seen things amongst the Egyptian pharaohs, and we've seen this with the Nazcan boarding of children's heads. So it's 2 different sides of the world, but the same thing. So, at first they said all these Egyptians had this particular disease, but then there was a problem because there was a genetic disease that would be passed on to one generation to the next generation to the next. Well, it wasn't being passed on. It would just be out of the blue, one of them would have it. That sounds like either it was being boarded that way or one of them just decided, well, we're going to rule Egypt for a while, have some fun. I don't know what that was about, but it does seem, because that's what the big, tall, white alien, I mean, the regular human aliens look like. They're a little taller and much broader than us. They must come from a different type of gravity world than we do.
Yeah, probably lower gravity, right?
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, I would think so too. And but people, I would if I would have to take the grades, I would say the grays came from something like Mars. They have long, linky arms, long, linky legs, something that would be easier to move. They don't have bones; they have cartilage. It's a different type of thing, so they could just reach up and pull themselves up from level to level to level at Mars. I mean, we could be able to jump up from level to level, but they would just be a much different environment. And when people say they see them, so if you've ever seen what's his name? They made Taken. If you ever see the series Taken, somebody actually had been talking to researchers, because when you see the Greys move, you see them going in the hallway, then you see them going on the side of the wall, you see them going on top of the wall. That's how they do. That's what creeps people out so bad. They're like cockroaches almost, and they're very, very strong for little bitty things. A regular 3 foot one could drag me and Sean around. They could grab one of them, could grab both of us and drag us down the hall like it's nothing. So they're very strong. So it's a weird combination of where they come from. And you would think somebody developed in a lower gravity than us would be weaker than us, which is what they should be. So there's something else going on there that we're not quite aware of, or maybe something that over the years they've done to themselves, genetically engineered themselves in a way or something. So, but anyway, you see the Greys come in much later into the scene. There's somewhere around 3,000 years ago is when you see the first Egyptian hieroglyph of a Grey. And it's the same time you see they show you in one of the hieroglyphs, they show you a helicopter, an airplane, a saucer, and something else. It's all in one hieroglyph. And there's other mentions of, by the way, of UFOs in Egyptian hieroglyphs, just spread it out, smashed out through their history. Well, scientists didn't know what they were, so they just whatever. And it's very interesting to see. So from what we can see, they were very interested in the Egyptians, who was the most advanced civilization at their time. Sumerians were great, but when we talk about that time era, how much do we talk about the Sumerians versus the Egyptians? We talk about the Egyptians much more, yes. And they seem to be, and even though the Sumerians were a great civilization and get credit for the first written language, which I don't know if that's true or not, because now they say there's a zero dynasty Egypt. So there's an argument there. But regardless, they were powerful nations and powerful things, but they talk more about the Egyptians. And there's people like David Icke and other people who talk about the Sumerians. So both civilizations, by the way, did have alien contact. There's no doubt about that now. To what extent? I mean, you'd have to take that to the bank, but I'm pretty sure the Sumerians was the created race of the aliens that were visiting. That's who they were, the ones that built the white dome cities. I'm pretty sure they created the Sumerians. And in turn, a cross between them and the reptilians is probably what created the Egyptians. It's probably why they were as advanced as they were. And when you go back 12,500 years and you look at, so Angkor Wat's only lines up with Draco at 12,500 years. The Seven Sisters the Easter Islands only line up with the Seven Sisters at 12,500 years ago. I forgot which one the Stonehenge lines up with, but they line up with it only at 12,500 years. What the hell happened then? I mean, that's the end of the Ice Age, by the way, too, ladies and gentlemen. That's
it was the Upper Dryas period. It was like there was like a mini cataclysm, right?
Yeah. So there's something. Years ago or something. Yeah, there's something we're missing. There's something our ancestors want us to know. Maybe it's something we need to know for the future. Now, if Dr. Paul Levalette is right, then it's the midpoint of the next cosmic pulse. So they prove that this is real, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. So the core of the galaxy gives off a cosmic. It's like a burp, about every 26 to 46,000 years. And it takes a long time to get across there to us. But when it does, it leaves behind certain chemicals that you can find. They found them when they were coring snow samples in the North Pole. So when it comes in, what you're going to see is, for a long time, you're going to see what looks like a cloud way off in the distance. And it's going to get closer and closer, and then the dust is going to start to fill our solar system. And as it does, the closer it gets to the Earth, the faster the sun's going to start to shape. But remember, when it first creates this, it's going to create a global warming. Then it's going to cause a serious global ice age. And then it's going to pass by us, and everything's going to go back to normal. How long is that period? According to Paul, it's 12,500 years long. So is it true? Is it not? I don't know. I don't know the dates, but I know they found 3 layers about every 36,000 years. They found 3 layers in the thing. So it does seem to be real, and it does seem to be headed this way. Maybe it stopped. Our galaxy is weird. Sometimes our black hole just goes quiet and stops eating. It's not just ours. A lot of them do it. They just stop eating. Nobody knows why. A lot of theories. Oh, it's full. Well, what the hell do you mean full? How does it get full? Is it alive? I mean, is that what's going on here? I mean, there's a lot of us do believe the galaxy is probably sentient, so because it creates life. It's anything that creates life must be sentient. It's and then the Book of Eden. There's a lot of things that point back to this date. But just what bothers me about this is you can find this even in some Christian Bibles. You can even find this date, but no one tells you what the date is about. They just it's like, look, and that's it. There's nothing else that goes with it. It's one of the most frustrating things I've seen in any of this, because it does exist, and there's lots of things that point to it. Angkor Watts had something on one of their walls writing about it, and somebody came in and chiseled it all off the wall. Who was that?
Why would have somebody done that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's my
Why?
question. Why would they have done that? And the authorities said if they ever find him, they're going to do 30 years in prison. They don't even, because they don't know what it was. We know what it was.
Oh, this was recently? This is recently?
Well, no, they don't know. That's the thing. So they don't know when it happened. They figured it happened sometime between yesterday and 1,000 years ago, because no one tracks what goes on there. You don't, in some places you have to get a permit to go visit. Most of the time, anybody can drive in there and go look around. Angkor Wat is a beautiful place, people. It's one of the most stunning cities ever built on our planet, and no one even knows. It's like the Toltec cities. No one knows why they were abandoned. Some people say diseases. Some people say this. Some people say that. I mean, when you go into like an Incan city today, it's still intact. The whole city's there, and you're just walking around through it thinking, okay, well, what happened here? And they don't. And if there was a disease, it would be some remnants left behind. Some people think somebody just came over, sucked them up, and left. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's as good as any other theory out there.
Well, didn't they claim Angkor Wat, or at least the king that was there in 1000 AD or whatever, claims to have built it, but it seems to be a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot older than that. I think they put it at 3,600 years old, and about the same time as the Toltec city. Matter of fact, there's several things on this planet that date out around the same thing. No, the Egyptian pyramids are older than, well, some of the Egyptian pyramids are older than that, but I know Khufu, who's really the one who should get credit for it. He built the first three pyramids, which the bent pyramid was one of them. You know, the pyramid that does this. It's kind of, he built that pyramid, but he built three of them, and that was they said was the peak to learn how to build them. And it could have just been us learning. I mean, humans aren't stupid. We figure things out. But do y'all know that the Egyptians charted the world? The rotation of the planet, which is it's off. It wobbles.
Yeah. By the way, Joe, folks just joining, they're listening to Through a Glass Darkly Radio on United Public Radio.
See, he knows how to plug things.
That's right.
He knows how to plug things.
But
the planet has precession, which means we wobble. So we wobble 2 to 4 degrees. The Egyptians tracked it to 2 degrees. You can't even track with a freaking computer today with 2 degrees. Every scientist is amazed by this. Now, even the Chinese track things and showing things in ways that we have a hard time doing with all this advanced science we have today. So you have to wonder, was it their science or was there something else going on? China was a weird place. China built the walls around them and stayed there for 5,000 years. Didn't bother the world at all. We wouldn't bother them, by the way. Marco Polo, right? We bothered them. They were just minding their own damn business. And we're the ones that drug them into the world. I don't think China would have came out. They would just seem to be very happy in their little world there. But yet they've invented gunpowder, people. And they invented several other things, besides several medicines. They charted the galaxy as much as they could with what they had. And I'm still wondering if they even had a telescope. I never even heard that they did. So, you just got to wonder about some of the stuff on our planet. Well, no, you're wrong. Electricity wasn't invented by Franklin. It was there was a battery created 2,000 years ago. An electric. With gold plating is, people, you use electricity to gold plate. Somebody invented that 2,000 years ago. So we don't know what came out of that, because everything that went to the Library of Alexander went where? We got sacked and destroyed. I cannot even imagine how much losing the Alexander Library set us back. 2,000 years.
Well, they also found like the Antikythera device, right?
Yeah.
Like in Greece, which is like this extremely sophisticated mechanical device that
they don't know. They don't know what it does, what it is. They're still trying to figure out how it was put together. I mean, we do shows in O-Parts all the time, which are out of place artifacts, which you find like the Pravada cover stone, which dates back 120 million years. Nobody knows how it got there. So 120 million years ago, remember, humans weren't here. We are only 2 million years old. That's the best you can give humans on this planet is 2 million years, even though there has been some footprints found under dinosaur footprints in Arkansas, which I thought first they thought was a hoax, but then they realized how hard it was to chisel them out. They couldn't have been a hoax. So there was something that had a foot like probably some kind of ape or monkey. It could have been us, but anyway, 120 million years ago, there was a cover stone that showed the resources in a valley. So this thing had all kind of stuff painted on it to show where the resources were in this valley. The only way you could see this was from above. So someone had an aerial view of this valley 120 million years ago and created a cover stone so that you knew what it was and what was there. And who the hell was that? What, some raptor said, "Oh, watch this." I mean, people, just some things that are hard to answer, and you're kind of like, so remember this, ladies and gentlemen, we formed in the last 2 millions on this planet. There have been 6 great extinctions on this planet. We've been at almost 800 million years of life on this planet. Anything could have evolved in that time. Anything. As far as we know, there could have been 5 or 6 of us, 5 or 6 different.
Yeah,
they might be,
we might
be.
You could have had
Yeah.
a saurian civilization of like lizard people, right?
Yeah,
Who
you could
knows?
have, and we may meet them in 100 million years. They may come back and say, "Hey, what y'all doing on our planet, humans? I hope your technology is really advanced now, because guess what? We want our planet back." It just there's so much stuff that suggests that we're wrong about so many things, and I don't mind us being wrong. I just want us to correct them. But today's society seems to be very dogmatic. It doesn't seem to want to really change or learn. It's almost like you got to beat them in the head and make them know they're wrong before they ever decide to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was bad to lose the library. Now, most scientists say it put us back at least 2,000 years. They also tell you the Inquisitions put us back probably another 500 years. Um, and just think how scared. Think about Leonardo, Michelangelo, the whole bunch of them, Galileo, and the time period they lived in. Just think how great they would have been if they would have lived in a time period when it wouldn't have been, "Oh, I might get executed for talking about this or showing this," because they had
We're
to be
still
very
there,
careful.
Joe. We're still there today. Maybe not executed, but canceled. Like you're
Yeah. Oh,
done.
yeah. Canceled is a good way of putting it. So it's really hard to do it. And now, the Island Africa theory, they blew that out of the water for man. They're saying now that there had been pockets of humans around the planet without that. So little quick DNA for y'all, ladies and gentlemen. Two people. That's it. Half our population today would be retarded. The other half of the population would be geniuses, or it would have been some kind of mix. But we know that. Well, we could say that about breeding in the royal families, but we're not going to go there. We're going to talk about breeding animals, dogs, cats. So you can read like the son back to the mother, the father back to the daughter one time. That's the only generation. If you do it again, you're going to have all kind of health issues, all kind of problems. So there
Yeah, all
is a
kind of
point.
genetic problems.
Yeah, all
Right.
kind of genetic problems. So we know that couldn't be true for humans. So today, scientists say it used to be 3,600. Now it's like 4,400. But to have a healthy population of 8 billion, we had to start out at one point with no less than 4,400 humans on the planet, no less. So there's no 4,400 human tribes running around Africa. So they had to be different places. Now they're saying, well,
What
there might have
about
been some.
mutations induced by like radiation, things
Well,
like
they could have been that too, but and remember, they said we killed the Neanderthals. We found that we didn't kill the Neanderthals. We bred them out. Not just them. There were several other races. So most people don't even know this. Last time I checked, there were 7 or 8 different types of man on this planet, and they just bred each other out. And Cro-Magnon was the last. That was which is us, or technically us. And
Yeah, I think most Europeans and like East Asians have like 5% or up to 5% Neanderthal DNA.
yeah. So when you look at that, of course, Lloyd Pye said that Neanderthals were what's turned into Bigfoot today. So he's passed now. Right? He's the guy who had all the research done on the alien skull, but it was a theory because he was a cryptozoologist. He just couldn't let it go. I was like, Lloyd, I like most of your theories. I said, but this is kind of bugging me a little bit. I said, they pretty big for being Neanderthals.
Yeah, Neanderthals were shorter than
Yeah, they were short and
modern
stocky,
humans.
man. Almost like they came from a much heavier environment than this one. It was kind of funny, but it does seem like that's what's happened, that we interbred and we just bred them out. And that's what we'll do, people, when we start going to other worlds that have human like people on it. We'll just get there and breed them out. And they'll be just, come on. We will, if we were allowed to get into the universe right now and travel in deep space, we would spread chaos across the universe like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, I mean, we can't even like our leaders can't even like wipe their own, their own
Yeah, it
asses.
was just.
Let alone, they can't even keep their hands out of the cookie jar.
Well, we would
Can't
do
help
that until we
themselves.
ran into a race that was like, "Excuse me, but our technology is 100 million years older than yours. So, what you want to do? What? Guess what?" So, I
Which would
mean, we
happen pretty quickly. It would
that's what
happen
I
pretty
think.
quickly
I
too.
think it would happen pretty
Yeah.
quickly. So it's best that we stay at home for right now. I mean, which there's nothing wrong with where we are on Earth. I mean, there's lots to explore. We have our solar system, which we can spend a good 1,000 years, another 10,000 years exploring. I mean, we have asteroids worth so much money that we're going to get in there and get all of that out. Eventually, somewhere down the line, the monetist system like we have today will change. The way we treat healthcare will change, but that's still a little ways off. I mean, I see movement in that direction, but it's still a good ways off. And the aliens come here for whatever reason. One of the biggest questions I get asked, and I've probably been asked this question more times than I can count. As a matter of fact, if I had $1 for it, I could retire. Why are they here? That's a good question. Why are they here, and where do they come from? The Greys swear when Greys are pushed that they were a race that was living on the other side of our galaxy, and when the light beams came here from another galaxy, they found the Greys and engineered the Greys to be the galactic policemen because they said when they first got here, when the light beams first got here, the entire galaxy was at war, or all the advanced races were at war, and they
Mhm.
came in to correct it. And they created a very advanced race that could do things that no other race could do, that the light beams could use as a galactic policeman. And that's what it looks like when you hear about other worlds. When you talk about the black-eyed people's world, or you talk about ours, it seems like it's what the Greys are there for. Not for us people. They're not policing us. They're policing the other races coming here. And I know people like to say, well, there's 56 different types of alien. We'll prove it. I haven't seen evidence. I haven't even seen, Bracken rarely found enough evidence for four. And let's go talking about spaceships. There's not that many different types of spaceship. There's circle, round, saucers, and stretched out saucers, squares, triangles, and that's not much more than that. There's different versions of them, but it's still the same thing. And as far as orbs go, I'm pretty sure orbs are probes from little bitty hand size to the size of your damn house. It just
Mhm.
depends what they're looking for. But I mean, we have filmed so many probes it gave me a headache. And orbs, I don't like to get into orbs because most orbs I find are just dust. A little speck of dust hit by a camera a certain way makes it look like an orb. Now, a friend of mine, Gregory Avery, I don't know how he did this. First off, he takes this picture of the hospital next door to him. Great picture. So when you look at it,
Mhm.
just all these gold things just floating up from the hospital in the parking garage. I mean, they're like orbs, but were pointed like a teardrop almost, and they were floating up, and it was weird. So then he used to take pictures of like doing Halloween. He'd make the orbs pose like over the skeleton's head or two on each witch's head. I don't know how he got him to do that. I don't know what that was about. And those were different when you looked at them. When you got up close to them, they had particular what do they call them? Not hexagons. Anyway, there's a particular geometric shape inside of them, not like what you'd see in dust. So they were interesting, but I don't think it's anything alien though, people. I have no idea what it is, not a clue. It was spooky, weird stuff.
Sounds like it
But
could be like a disembodied soul or
it
something like
could be.
that. Who
It might be
knows?
what the soul looks like when it's leaving, or when it's
Mhm.
hanging out. I don't. It was good stuff though. You can probably still find it online somewhere. I think he retired, but I'm pretty sure you can still find it online. And then there's so many other weird things out there, but when you come to aliens, there's just not that many. There was a guy, there used to be an alien they used to talk about in the 50s that would look like a creature. It had some kind of weird shaped head and like hoofs on its feet. And it looked really scary, but it wasn't. It was there to save humans. Anytime it was around and aliens were abducting somebody, it would intervene and take them away and kill the aliens. This was in the 50s. It's the only time I've ever heard about this. Was it real? Was it not? There's over 50 reports of it, but it's the only reports I can find.
Where
Uh,
did they see this thing typically,
it'd
or was
just
it
be
all
on the
over?
highway, get abducted. Thing would just show up. It would just show up in his craft and do it. Wherever you were being taken, it would just show up in his craft and take these things. Maybe the Greys finally killed it, so we had enough of that. I don't know. I mean, it was weird. And then there's of course there's Charles Hall's aliens, and then of course the three we talk about, and then every now and then, then there's the praying mantis.
Mantids. Mhm.
So this is a big argument amongst researchers. So some people say that they see these things doing whatever. Well, we've got at least 50 cases where the Greys were doing, no, I'm sorry, the reptilians were doing something and messing with these people, and you could see the mantis. It was like sitting in this square room, and there's lights going around, smoke and stuff, and it was moving and trying to scare people. But a couple of contactees said when the Greys left and it went off, they were just like puppets. They weren't real. They said they were puppets. They walked up, messed with it. It didn't do anything. It's like it was real. It wasn't real. And there's probably over 100 cases that said that now. So a lot of people think they're just some kind of autonomous puppet sent there to scare the living crap out of people. I don't know, people. I don't know, because I mean, these are real big manas when they talk about it. Most of the manas I get description of that may and may not be real or smaller. And the Greys may be an insect. To have posted on my messenger, they may be an insect type race. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, they're weird looking, big, bulky heads, you know. And then, by the way, this is another abduction criteria I'm going to give y'all, and I shouldn't. See these eyes on this Gray? That's not what the Gray's eyes look like. Not even at all. The Greys wear a black patch over each eye. There must be, well, a lot of people say that it can do a lot of things. It can see a lot of things, but a lot of people think it's because wherever they come from, the light is much lower than it is here. And there have been cases when they were taking people out of the room and they turned on like the 100-watt lights and they kind of flinched and moved back and then readjusted. So they may be from a planet with low light. It makes sense to me. Anything with eyes that big are definitely somewhere that the light's lower than it is here. So you get little clues, little things like that. You know, you find out what their eyes look like without the patches. And we use that because we use it when people call us and tell us, have you ever seen the Greys without the black thing on their eyes? And then they'll go right into what the eyes look like. And in a lot of ways, they look like eyes. They're a little bit bigger than eyes, though. And they have these funky, weird colors. So it's a strange thing, but these are abduction criteria because we keep those secret because if anybody's experienced this, when they tell me the eye was shaped like this and the color was like this, I know they've seen the damn thing. And they're a good case. And if somebody says, oh, no, the eyes were red, I know they didn't see the thing. And there are times where the Greys like to play good cop, bad cop. So sometimes you'll hear about Greys dressed in brown cloaks with red eyes. And so there'll be one of them in a regular Grey and then one in the cloak. And they're playing good cop, bad cop. That's what they're doing. One's being like, oh, you know, if you tell us, and others like, I'm going to kill you and eat you, whatever. That's what they're doing. And they get whatever they're looking for that way. Well, they're very telepathic. All three races are, but the Greys are more telepathic than the other two, but all three races are telepathic. And one of the things let's see. Okay.
Yeah. Now, what common characteristics do some of these abductees have? Like you were talking about blood type earlier. What's the deal with that?
Well, see, that's what's weird. So we know at one point on this planet, there was no Rh negative, which is very interesting because Rh negative is a baby killer. Mother Nature's not creating this. This would have killed lots of babies on the planet. They estimate right now the current Rh negative on this planet is 15% and growing. So that would mean that 15% of all babies born would be at jeopardy of dying a still death if the parents were not the same blood type. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, until just 20 years ago, you had to have a blood type to get married because if not, your baby had a good chance of being stillborn. That's the reason they used to give those blood tests until they found some Australian with some weird blood and they created, I think it's called the anti-dinogen D gene. I always screw that up, but I think that's what it's called. And they give you a shot now and you can have a baby. But think about that. Before that, you couldn't. Mother Nature ain't creating that. That's not something. And it's even more so than that. Rh negative.
It's very maladaptive, right?
Yeah. So Rh negative, well, O negative is a universal donor and the purest form of blood known to man. It's where all of our hematological research comes from. What the hell is that? So before that, there wasn't none of this. And now we got a universal. I guess as man went into war, some alien said, you know what, we better give them a universal donor so we can keep these bitches alive because they're going to run out of blood. Oh, no. So, you know, I always hear like AB is 1.5% and AB positive and AB negative is 1.5% the rarest form of blood to man. It's not true because they can take Rh negative, but Rh negative can only take Rh negative. So technically it's the rarest form of blood on the planet. They can only take their own blood. Where we can give blood to everybody else on the planet, they can only take their own blood. There's no giving them this, that, or the other thing. It doesn't happen. And Rh negative people have a different distemperament than Rh positive people do. You don't have to take my word for it. There's been several studies on this. They just are slightly different than each other. And it's a strange thing, but you know, because if we got into what the difference is, well, we'd be here for hours. But There are a lot of we have posted some to the website what the differences are. So today, because we did out of the 140,000 cases we haven't filed, plus some that were given to us from other organizations and some other organizations who ran the same blood type study, about 65% of all abductees are Rh negative. Out of that 65%, more than half of them are Rh negative. Yeah, strange. And more than half of all contactees are blue or green eye or shades of it. So wait, now these are the mutations. So it's almost like somebody created this mutation to put into our population so the current population who's being abducted could be abducted the way they want. So if you go to a mall and you test, this is why this pisses people off all the time. Because I always hear, especially from my new age friends, everyone's telepathic or empathic. It's just latent in their genes. That's bullshit. So this is easy. You don't have to take my word. You can go take a deck of cards, go to any mall in this country, say, we're doing a sci-fi test. You'll be surprised how many people will stop to take it. I mean, it's like every fifth person will stop and do it. So you can just do 2 cards, simple. Colored cards, numbered cards, whatever you want. I like to do blue and green or blue. I like to do blue and orange, actually, because they're distinctively different. So I'll look at the cards myself and I'll set them down. And I'll say, okay, tell me what this card is. I mean, you're sitting there all day waiting for somebody to get it right. Oh yeah. A lot of times you'll spend the whole day and no one will get it right. Yes, because it's only about 15% of the population actually has this ability. And it's really weird since 15% of the population is Rh negative. Now, what's even better is if you test the Rh negative versus Rh positives, you will find out that more Rh negatives are telepathic than Rh positives, even though there's many more of them than there are of the Rh negatives. It's a strange thing. It's almost like somebody created this to help the human race move forward to become a telepathic race. See, we don't even consider somebody a contactee if they're not empathic. So if they don't have an empathic ability, they're not a contactee. It's whoever started this program way back when, whatever race decided they were going to do this, they interbred this into us to the point where all contactees are empathic, and most of them are telepathic. Some of them are really quite telepathic. And you don't take my word on that, because the U.S. government came out in 2020, fired everybody who was working on the remote viewing progress, and the Air Force and Navy decided they were only going to do telepathy, because telepathy is much more accurate than remote viewing is. Remote viewing is good for a lot of things, but telepathy. So a remote viewer can find like the missile site, but the guy with telepathy can also find the missile site, but he also can look in the guy's head and see the code to turn off the missile, which remote viewers can't do. So that's why he started looking for him. Remote viewers can be trained to do this pretty easy, but no one with these abilities, anybody, if you have this ability, you're part of the abduction family, and you're being taken. That's just, you may never know it, but you're being taken, because that's the things they're looking for. There are certain abilities.
What about premonition?
Well,
Like
premonition kind of
precognitive
falls into the
dreams?
same. The precog dreams kind of fall in the same thing. It's something to do with whatever started this, whatever blood or mutation thing, whatever they put in our genes way back when to create all these mutations. That had something to kicked off certain things in certain people, certain abilities. But you know what's funny is the what is it? Which one ability is it? Anyway, the one where you can move stuff with your mind. No one seems to have that.
Oh, psychokinesis.
Yeah, that's a thank you, psychokinesis. No one
Lynn
seems to have
Buchanan did as a kid. He
it.
did.
Well, if they do, it's going to be 1 in 100 million or 100 billion. Because let
Yeah,
me
it's
put it
very
in
rare.
relationship. You know how I know that we don't have this ability on this planet? It's a real easy one too. You want me to tell y'all how? Putin's still alive. Oh shit, Donald Trump is still alive. Oh shit, Xi Jinping is still alive. If America had this ability, they would just go in somebody's head, squeeze an artery, and give them an aneurysm and kill them. It would look like a natural death.
Mm-hmm.
Away they went. They're dead. So we haven't got to that point, and thank God, because we're not ready for that yet. I have seen once or twice where with someone who really was amped up have been able to move something, but not for long distance and not a lot of control. So it's ability that's going to probably come over the next 1,000 years or 10,000 years, but not right now, because we're not ready for that ability. We're not even ready for telepathy. Do you realize America, for that matter, everybody in the world, if we were walking around in everybody else's head? Really, y'all don't want to know what's in my head. Trust me, you just don't. It's not because there's anything horrible, anything. You just don't want to know. It's like garbage in there. You'd be like, what the hell? And it's not just me. I mean, everybody, you'd be walking down the street and say, oh, yeah, you really think that, asshole? I mean, you're in a fight because a guy said you look funny or something. Well, he didn't
Well, I
say
mean,
it.
the entire like every government would collapse because we'd be able to read what's on these
Yeah.
politicians' minds, and
And
it
you know how
would
many
just
times
be
guys would get slapped in the face as a pair of big boobs went going by? I mean, you'd have to learn how to turn that off, man. You'd be like, or your wife goes, were you looking at? No, baby. And she's, oh, yeah. I mean, come on. We're just not ready for that, people. It's an ability we're going to get and we're going to grow it, but we're not ready for it yet. And eventually we'll learn how to block it out and close out the noise. But it's another thing. Just think if you can't block it out and it's all you hear is all that noise in your head all the time. It would make you crazy. We work with empaths to help them to learn how to turn it off because empaths have two things. They're either full on, where when they're walking around, everything they're thinking, and you can test this out. You can take a good empath that whatever mood they're in, find a building or a room where there's a bunch of people hanging out, sitting down, and send them in there. Within 5 minutes, everybody in that room will be in the same damn mood they are, whether it's good, bad, or different. I took one girl, she's crying, screaming, just lost somebody in the family. And it was cruel of me to do this, and I was sitting in a room. Yeah, I'm not kidding you. Like 10 minutes later, everybody in the freaking room is bawling. They're all looking at each other like, what is wrong with us? What is wrong? I was like, Jesus. Or the other problem is sometimes empaths pull in everybody. So they'll walk in a room and they start feeling emotions, and it can be uncontrolling for them. I mean, it can be overwhelming. They can be happy, sad, horny, just a whole realm of emotions they can go through, like boom, 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 boom. And it's so we work with them and teach them how to control that, how to block that out. But again, if they don't have it, they're not a contactee. That's a real simple thing for us. It helps us every time to make sure if someone's a real contactee or someone trying to be a contactee. I wish everybody on the planet had it. And everybody eventually, I don't know, 100 million, 200 million years, everybody probably will have it. And when I say that, people are like, oh, Joe, that's forever. No, not really. The planet's already 4.5 billion years old, so that's not really that far down the road. That's just a drop in the bucket in the universe.
if we survive that long.
If we survive that long. And there's another weird thing. Maybe, a lot of politicians and actors are blue-eyed. Maybe we should stop letting blue-eyed politicians run the world. I'm just, well, no, it doesn't matter. We got brown ones too. They're just as bad. But it's weird because when you sit and watch TV, overall, I mean, blue eyes are 8% or 18%. I've forgotten. I have to go look. I think it's 8%. No, 14% now. So if you go look, you're going to see far more than 14% on TV that are blue-eyed.
Mm-hmm.
Green eye's different. Green eye's only around 2%, and you only see them on TV every once in a while. Well, no, people love green-eyed people. They're good for television, but it's just not something. It's just not enough of them, and a lot of them don't want to be actors or politicians, so they have a different mindset. And I think blue-eyed people like that set. I mean, it's just one of the things. Well, remember, for millions of years, they were brown-eyed people. Everybody who was killing each other on the planet. Maybe we should just get rid of all the brown-eyed people, and there won't be no more deaths. Ooh, yeah. What about that one? I couldn't do that because too many of my friends are brown. It wouldn't work. Well, when you think about the Middle East,
well, just ask Sid Jimins how that worked.
I know. Oh, that worked really good for them. I can see that. But when you go back in time, like if you're walking through any Middle Eastern country, even today, the majority of people you're going to see are going to be dark brown hair, dark skin, or brown skin and brown eyed. By far, I mean, if you see any other colors there, it's weird, and it's not just there. If you go to Africa or South America, you see it still today. It's still the overall majority, about 80% of the population's like that. That's what they say we're going to revert to anyway. I've heard most scientists say within a million years, everybody here will be light brown skinned and light colored hair. Don't ask me. I'm not a scientist. Well, I got a bachelor's in science, but still, that don't matter. I'm not that kind of scientist. I don't really know. There's so many of these stupid things that they put out there that you never know what's true and what's not. But there is a lot of information suggesting about our DNA now, and it's not what we thought it was going to be. The weird, there's so many weird, fluky, weird things. And when you talk to science, you ask yourself, where did RH negative come from? Well, we don't know. We ain't figured that out. Most say 25,000 years ago.
Even stuff they figured out, they probably didn't really figure out. Right?
Yeah.
Like they have pretty much doctrine on like when all these places were built, and civilization is only this old, and they keep finding more evidence like Göbekli Tepe and things like that.
Yeah, we seem to be much older.
Theories.
So we know we got to 12,500 years now for sure. They can't take that away from us, and we know when that big tsunami happened about 20 years ago and uncovered in big two cities off the coast of India, they're 10,000 years old. So we know we have the 12,500 years. They can't take that away from us. Now we know our civilization's at least that old. Anybody who thinks that look, I don't want to be mean to people, so we're not going to go there. But if you think the planet's only 6,000 years old, you're an idiot. Okay, that's like the ones who think it's flat. You're also an idiot. You can write to Sean about that, or no, write to me, Sean DeRoche, about that. Anyway, she'll straighten you out. Just telling you. But I mean, there's just so many things that we've been so wrong about that we need to correct. Well, I was bitching for 20 years. I kept saying, well, if there's ice on Mars, there has to be water. Since it's not carbon ice, it's ice. It's got to be water. And then they found out there was clouds and rain and things we didn't know about, liquid water. And I'd been saying for decades that liquid. I also said there must be oxygen somewhere on the planet or something, because there's got to be something alive on Mars, because from time to time
there's a methane cycle. There's a
methane cycle
right.
and an oxygen cycle. They're going together. So something. And methane and oxygen are usually only made by things that are alive or dying. So methane can be created by something that's alive and burping, or something that's dying also. Oxygen is usually created by something that's alive, something that's growing. Well, plankton makes it.
I think NASA's known for decades that there's.
Oh, I think they do too. I think when Viking
there.
landed, it was a surprise to them, and they were like, there's something here. No, whoever said that to me the other day, a friend of mine kept telling me, oh, we can't cut down the rainforest, we're going to suffocate. No, that's not true. I think 80% of all oxygen is made by plankton. Don't kill the ocean, then we're going to die. But no, the rainforest don't make near as much. Plus, now we're designing plants that produce, like, one plant can produce just 5 times as much oxygen as any other plants can. I think it's even more. That's like 25 times more. But plankton is what keeps us alive, in case y'all didn't know that. Yes, look it up, people. Without the ocean, we'd be suffocating. And with 8 billion of us, there's not near enough trees on this planet to keep us breathing. No, there would be pockets. And they think you might find pockets of air on Mars, like in valleys and underground facilities, underground places and stuff like that. What I don't understand is why NASA won't go to, like, the Mariner Valley. There's just places NASA should go, because there definitely looks like there's some kind of ruins there. And, I used to preach this all the time. It's the, so I was told a long time ago by a particular person in the government. He said, Joe, he said, it looks like our government has decided that we're going to bring people in one little step at a time. We're gonna desensitize people to the fact that this alien. So one of the desensitization is to bombard us with alien images. Well, that's turn on the TV. It's all you got to do. I mean, all the sci-fi. I mean, there's so much alien stuff. So we are getting desensitized. You'll see people with little gray aliens on their keychains and Dorito bags with flying saucers. I mean, it's just part of our society now. And we're as a society looking forward to meeting aliens. Now we have all these sightings, and we're seeing also what the government's talking about. So the next thing will be, we'll go to Mars and we'll discover that some probably amoeba or something on Mars, or maybe some kind of mouse eating some kind of leaf thing underground, or maybe a nematode or something like that. But we're going to find something alive, and then so all of a sudden we're going to be doing our things, exploring Mars, and then somebody's going to run into an artifact, and they're going to be, oh shit. But they're going to say, oh, look, artifact's like 1 million years old, 100 million years old. So we won't be nervous. We'll be like, oh yeah, look, this, and we'll be all these. But that does tell us that there is real intelligent life out there besides us. But it won't be in our face for God knows when. But at least at that point, we'll be steadily being desensitized. Okay, we know it's coming. There's no doubt it's coming now. Once we find an artifact, it's just a matter of time. And then somewhere along the line, when they think we're ready, there'll be a full contact, and we'll be introduced to extraterrestrials for the first time. But people always tell me that's 500 years. I don't know when that is, people. Humans are brilliant but stupid at the same time. So I don't want to put a date on that. I agree. It could be.
I think they should just rip off the Band-Aid. I mean, for good
I do
Christ's
too.
sake.
So I thought about that. I used to talk about that all the time. So America, right now in America, about half the country would take it without even a problem. Somebody said, well, religion. Well, the Mormons would take it too. They would be, because the Mormons think aliens are real, sort of. But the Catholics would flip out, even though
Catholics would be fine. Catholics would
even when I'm not talking about the Vatican, because they already know. So here y'all go, people. Right. I interviewed Monsignor Balducci. This was 20 years ago at the X Conference 9 in Washington, D.C. Piola Harris was my translator because she spoke fluent Italian. So we're talking, and he's just telling me steady that, yes, he even describes the aliens, like the aliens, both the reptilians and the humans. He goes into great detail about this. And then he stops and he pauses, and he tells her, I'm not sure I should tell Joe this. And she's like, what? And he said, well, I don't want to tell you either. And I said, well, Mr. Balducci, I said, whatever it is, if you tell me. If you think it's something I don't need to make public, I won't make it public. I give you my word as a good Catholic Christian. And he said, okay. And he goes and he says, they're closer to God than we are. And I was like, what? It just caught me off guard. I really did. I was not expecting to hear that, because this guy's way up in the church. I just wasn't expecting to hear that. And I was like, wow, okay. He said, so maybe sometimes they're being directed by the big boss. I said, well, maybe so. So then a couple of weeks later, actually a couple of months later, I met up
What did
with
he mean by closer to God, though? Like
closer to
just,
God.
but
Their
it's,
souls are closer to God than our souls are.
in
He
other
means
words,
they
they're
have a
just more
closer
spiritual.
relationship. Yeah, they have
Yeah.
it's like they knowing better whatever it is better than what we understand. It's like it's a much more open relationship than what we have. In other words, I think what he was trying to say is they know for sure that God exists and they speak to him every day. But now what God is to them and what God is to us may not even be the same damn thing. I hate to say that, but how they view a religion or worship or God may not be what we think it is. Because we look at the universe sometimes, and a lot of things you look at in the past were probably technology based, not spiritual based. So that those kind of things, and maybe that's what he was saying. Because when I met with the astronomer from the Vatican, him and I talked for 4 hours, and he actually spoke pretty good English. And he said, Joe, he said, there's no doubt we know they're here. He said, the Vatican's probably got several of them underground. He said, it's not, he said, we know they're here. And we also know they're not here to wipe us out. He said, because probably would already done it, which I agreed with him. He said, really and truly, he said, I wonder if it's not to bring us to a point where they can introduce us to what they already believe, which is something the church would probably believe. But whatever it is, they do know it's real. So whether you believe or don't believe, they know it's real. They know whatever this is real. And you never know with translations. Now, one, if Paula was right, or when they were talking to the aliens, was that translation complete? Was it something else they were trying to express? So I don't know, people. This is a long time ago all this happened. It's all interesting stuff, but does it really mean anything? Not at the moment. It won't mean anything. Even if we find aliens tomorrow, we won't know what those things meant until much later in our life.
So we got a
And
question. We got a question
yeah,
from the comments that I kind of let go for a little bit until we got to a more
that's
relevant
cool.
part of the conversation. But are you familiar with this Jason Sands whistleblower who all the big wigs in the UFO community are kind of saying he's fake, he's false, he's not real?
I don't know.
He's the guy. He's the
I
guy who had like an encounter with that bluish being and kind of in Nevada, kind of near Las Vegas, maybe.
I've heard a lot of things around Las Vegas. I don't know. I'd have to check into it to see to be 100%. It's I've heard about a lot of different whistleblowers. Problem with whistleblowers is they're whistleblowers. They're turning on something to be a whistleblower. So do you trust them or not? It's a hard thing. I mean, it's like what's his name with strawberry ice cream?
Grush.
Uh, no, not him. The one Area 51.
Oh,
Oh, why is it?
Lazar.
Yeah, thank you, Lazar.
Yeah,
When he came out, did you believe him? Did you not believe him?
I
Was
still
it was
don't
a
know
hard
with him. I
it
still
was a
don't
hard
know.
thing. So I'm gonna tell you what I've learned and what I think, and y'all can decide for yourself. I do think he actually saw saucers. So I'm gonna tell you why. A good friend of mine used to work at the WIP facility, which is where they store all the non-nuclear weapons, all the non-nuclear stuff like, radiation for hospitals and stuff like that. Well, because she was so good, she got transferred to Los Alamos, and and her clearance is through the roof. So we're talking one day, and I said, "Can you look in the database and even see if man is in the database?" Because all three of them big facilities are hooked together, and also they also hooked
Hmm.
to Yucca Mountain now too. So yeah, stuff I shouldn't probably say, but anyway, so she looked and looked. She didn't find him, so she looked again, and her boss came in and said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm
Hmm.
looking for law." She told him his name. He said, "Really? That's what you want to know?" He said, "Hold on." He said he's not going to be in the science database. So he pulled up. Pulls up. He said, "There he is. He's a janitor." And I was like, "A janitor?" He said, "My boss came in and pulled this up, Joe." He said, I was surprised he knew right where he was, too, which really surprised me. So it clearly says, and we went looking for his formal education. Now I can find him up to high school. I cannot find a college in the United States that he attended. Now, was he lying or not? Was he clean? That's anybody's best guess. I can't tell you that. I didn't see anywhere where it looked like he was clean. I didn't see anybody in his colleges saying that this was done. It just seems like he didn't make it that far. We'd have to voice dressing to. We'd have to voice dress him to find out for sure. But so she said that. Well, I got to thinking about this. These are big facilities. You know what? They need janitors. And you know what? Their security clearance is going to be through the roof because somebody gets splattered inside of a hangar somewhere. Guess who's going to go clean it up? So it got me to thinking about it. And then I said, well, can you find out where he was stationed and for how long? She said, give me a second. She pulls up. It says he's stationed Area 51, Code 5, Level 9, underground
What's that
facility.
mean?
That
Code
means he was
5,
in
level 9.
Level 9 is a hangar system, which I shouldn't even be saying this, but it means it's a hangar system. So level 5 is a particular part of Area 51, which like a handful of us even talked about. What it is so on the backside of the mountain, there's a system that it tilts up. All the rooms tilt up, by the way. The whole thing moves, and they send them on there's a launching system that sends them in the air, just like you'd launch a missile. It's the same thing. I think for a while they were trying to shoot them in the air and see if they would just fly, like something would take over and make them fly. I don't think that actually worked well for him, but it did have him listed as the janitor for that section of the place. So it's a good chance he's seen him. I mean, you have to have a clearance. I mean, it's not like they don't give you a clearance to do. They probably checked him out. So
Do you
maybe
think he was a janitor? I mean, he was building rocket cars and stuff like that.
yeah.
in
So
Los Alamos.
I could build a rocket car, and I don't have a formal education in
I don't think
physics.
I don't think a janitor can. I don't
I
think
think it
most
could.
people can.
I think anybody who could read a book in a nutshell could do it. Universe in a
Mhm.
nutshell could do it. It's just people make a mistake sometimes and think people who don't go to college don't have the skills. A lot of people don't go to college because they're lazy, not because they're
Mhm.
stupid. College takes a lot of effort and a lot of stuff, and it's just one of those things that you have to wonder. I ran into him, and let's be honest, the man, what's his main career? He owns a brothel. That's where he makes his money from. So takes a lot of credibility away from me, not just for me, but for a lot of people. So if you got these big engineer things in your head, and you can do all this stuff while you open a brothel for a living. And as far as his car went, that bitch blew up into a million pieces. So we wouldn't count that as much. And there was some other problems with that. A bunch of scientists jumped off and said, "No, this is garbage." So you get into these different things, YouTube can teach you how to build a rocket car. By the way, YouTube can teach you how to build a lot of stuff that YouTube shouldn't. YouTube gets mad
Mhm.
about us saying stupid stuff, but in the old days, you could find out how to build a nuclear weapon on YouTube. Yes, you couldn't. How to split an atom.
You probably still can.
You probably still can. That's a bad part. And if you can't find it there, you can probably find it somewhere else. So, I mean, there's nothing there that gives him other than that. I mean, I like Lazar. I've talked to him a few times. I met him with, who introduced me? The news guy in Las Vegas. I can't think of his name right now, but
George Knapp.
yeah, George. He introduced me to him, and they were pretty good friends. And George, we were having dinner, and he said, "Well, I'm not exactly sure how he went to college because no one can find." And where he said he went, there's no sign of him anywhere. No records, no nothing. No one knows him in the school. None of the teachers remember seeing him. It makes it hard. Doesn't mean it's not true. It just makes it hard to verify. But when I talk to him, so I'm gonna tell you a little secret.
Well, let me ask you a question, Joe. If somebody gave you $20,000 to say, "I never saw that guy," would you take the $20,000?
No, I wouldn't take the money.
Would it be
I
like
still,
a
I got too much.
university professor who
Well,
makes
he might. But I'm gonna tell you how I know he didn't go to college. This is a real easy one. People that go to college speak a certain way. People who don't go to college speak another way. You don't have to take my word for it. Go see anybody who's been in college for 4 or 5 years, and he had been for at least 8 to do what he said he was doing. Your whole way you speak changes, and the more geeky sciencey you are, the more it changes. He just didn't have that. He sounded like everyday Joe, working at the gas station, that's who he sounds like, and he still sounds like that today. And so it makes it hard to take it to that next level. I don't know. I like him though, and I do think he saw a spaceship. I just don't know if he was telling us the truth about his career or not. And it doesn't matter because I do believe he saw the damn craft, and that's all really that matters. Is if did he see it or he didn't see it. He didn't say he tried to fly it or anything. He just said he saw it. So for me, the fact that he was in the level where they keep him, it was enough for me to know that he was probably telling us the truth. As far as his overall manner, he just doesn't seem like a college grad. He just doesn't have
My
that.
sense is that he was like they wanted him to leak information,
I think you're right
and
too.
And the reason I think that is because of what you mentioned earlier. He had like a really sketchy background. So it's instant plausible deniability,
It is.
right? So if the op didn't work out, it's like, look, a guy ran a brothel. So yeah, obviously you're right. Everything he's saying is untrue. And I think it had something to do with, his name, John Lear,
Yeah, Roger
the
Lear.
guy who was Roger Lear, who's
Yeah,
basically running him, right? The
yeah.
guy who was the son of the guy who invented Lear jets. He did flights for the CIA. It felt like it was kind of an op
It did feel
where
like it
they
was kind of an
used
up.
Lazar to disclose some of this information.
Every now and then they want to leak something, and sometimes they do something because there was a Cash Landry case where this big
Mm-hmm.
flying saucer thing was flying all over the place. But everybody forgets first, well, it melted the asphalt, people. It killed the one lady, died a horrible death of cancer. One of them got it, the other one was burned. And what no one ever likes to mention is there was hundreds of helicopters and chase planes flying this thing. This was ours, or it was either something we captured or something we built. Some
Or
people said
something
it was
we
ours.
captured and tried to put a nuclear reactor on.
Well,
Right.
so in case y'all didn't notice, ladies and gentlemen, we were actually, aircraft were not going to run on fuel back in the day. All of our aircraft and tanks were all going to be run on a rod, one rod that ran them. It was a nuclear fuel that ran them in there, and they would run for years and years on, didn't have to be pulled. Well, you know why they didn't do it, right? Because it made every airport a potential bomb. So everywhere when you had to dispense rods, they would have to be held until someone picked them up. So anyone who would ignite those just contaminated a large area. That's why the U.S. government decided against it, because they really thought that nuclear airplanes was the way to go. They would be long range. You wouldn't have to fuel them. Like today, how we got to fuel our jets all the time. There would be none of that. And instead of doing Mach 3, they'd probably be doing Mach 7 if we had enough technology to keep them from falling apart. So this was a program that we wanted to do. Actually, Stanton Friedman and I, who was a nuclear physicist, talked about this quite a lot. And somebody asked me all the time, well, he's a PhD. I said, no, he was just a regular nuclear physicist. But it's he was like me. I said the same thing. I said, man, I'm not doing a dissertation. It'll take forever to do this. Screw this. I got what I need. I'm out of here. But that's what he was. And that's what they really wanted to do. And everything, even our cars would eventually be. So what's going to happen now is we're going to go to probably either hydrogen or more than likely a cold fission type. So right now we're building a reactor for New York, which they want to build. This thing's about the size of two 18-wheeler beds. It's going to be big. It's not that big, but it's going to be big. But that thing should power the entire New York City for 50 years without having to do anything. Now, there's no refueling these. The way they're being built is the fuel lasts for so long and then it just spins out.
Are
But
these the new fission, like what kind of micro fission reactors that
yeah,
they have now?
they call it cold fission is what they call it. But I don't know what it kind of
Because I
sounds that way.
don't think they've cracked cold fusion yet. Like that's
No, they
not,
have.
that's
No,
not,
they did. They did a while back. So the first guy who did the experiment couldn't repeat it for a decade. He did it once. Him and his partner did it once, and he couldn't repeat it. And then recently, I think it was in 20 something, they repeated it and they actually started working on it. So we're going to see how plausible this really is, because the whole goal is to be everybody to have one about the size of this that'll run your car, run your house, run everything, and you'll own 3 or 4 of them, and then you'll have one that stays in your house, and they're all interchangeable between your vehicles, and then there'll be one massive one that runs your cities, and it won't cost hardly anything, because once you buy it, that's it. You're not paying for anything else. It's done. It's over. It'll run for probably outlive your cars. Might even outlive you. So that's what they want to do. Now, there's also helium-3 we're talking about, which we
right.
don't know how that's going to work yet. There is also antimatter, which we're talking about, and there's also dark matter, which they still. We're going to have dark matter energy. Really?
I don't think they have a clue. Dark
yeah, they don't know what it is. I mean,
it's just the absence of something to explain the mass of.
yeah,
of the
they're
galaxy.
I'm listening to the scientists at NASA. We're going to have dark matter. I wrote in, and do you know what it is? He never answered.
They
Then I
don't.
wrote in
They have
again.
no idea.
Really? Do you know what it is? How can you
It's
have
a
energy?
plug. It's a
Yeah.
plug, right? They measured the weight of the universe, then they measured all the things that they know, all the matter that they can recognize, and then everything that they can't explain, they throw into dark energy and dark matter, and that's
And
it.
the last antimatter experiment I heard of lasted 21 milliseconds. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. Let me
you know there's
rephrase.
antimatter in your banana, right? Like if you have a
Uh,
banana, there's antimatter in it.
Stay off my bananas, man. It's I'm sorry.
I'm
They
serious.
contained
Like
it.
it's
They contain.
extremely minute traces, but like the process with the cosmic rays coming in and like and the way that the soil is and stuff like that.
Now,
There's
if they can figure out how to contain it, it'll be a great fuel. But right now, I mean,
yeah,
last time
that's the
I'm
problem.
sure it's more than that now, but last time I'd heard they contained it for 21 milliseconds. Yeah, 21
I mean, how,
milliseconds,
how
people.
did
It's
they
not a
even
second.
contain it though?
They
With like an
have some kind of
electromagnetic
energy contain. They
radiation or something?
NASA showed it.
Yeah.
They showed it was like it looked like something off a Stargate or something. Man, it was round with all these things, rods poked in the side of it and stuff. And they thought they had it and they were going to be able to contain it for several minutes. No, 21 milliseconds. Yes, people, 21 minutes is not even not even half a second. It's ridiculous. But the amount of energy that even a drop can make is outrageous. So we're talking like zero point zero 0.01 ounce could power half the planet. It's just it's
The problem is it could probably also annihilate the
Oh
entire
yes, it could.
planet.
So a bomb made out of that. Oh no, it would make no one. No, we don't even want to think of bombs made out of that. And hydrogen, people say, "Oh, hydrogen." Well, hydrogen's interesting because one, it's not dangerous like everybody thinks it is. Yes, you'll have a hydrogen station here, there, and there, and here, but it's gonna be just like the gas station. Back in the 20s, all the people said we don't want a gas station in a corner because it's gonna blow up and kill everybody. Well, that never really happened, did it? Well, hydrogen's the same way. The way there's already hydrogen stations out there. There's just a handful. And that's what is it? California's Hydrogen Highway, I think, is where it's at. But anyway, the way these things are made, you're not going to really be able to blow them up. So your car, you pull up your car, you fill it up, you're going. And you know what the waste product of hydrogen is, people? It's clean water, pure clean water. There's not nothing in it. You could go back to the back of your tailpipe and drink the crap. Yes, it's very interesting. So we have a lot of ways to go, but it's just which one we're going to develop first. They're going to develop at
Well,
least two while we're alive, but I don't know how fast they'll get them out to us.
Joe, what do you make of us having potential retrieve crash craft? And if that's the case, how come we haven't used some sort of more exotic power source since then? You're talking all the way back to not even just Roswell, but Cape Girardeau in
Well, we
1941.
know there's a
Uh,
Texas airship,
right.
but so let's really look at this. So let's say we crashed a craft in Russia. Are we going to let the Russians keep our craft? No, we're not. We'll
Nope.
either go take it or blow it up. We're not letting them have it. And we're not going to let them keep our people that would start a war. So you have creatures that can come in your house and remove you, take your car if they want to, do anything they want. If they let us keep a craft, it's because they want us to have it. That's the best way to look at it because they want us to have it. So at Roswell, I would bet you $1,000 that the Roswell craft came from Germany because in they say at the turn of the 1900s that an alien had approached the Germans because the Germans were by far the most advanced country on the planet at that time. The United States wasn't even close to them, and they
Mhm.
were given the craft. So if you don't believe me, for starting in 1911 to about 1913, 14, the Germans were building all kind of saucers. They built saucer tanks, saucer boats, anything they could make a saucer.
It's like the Horton brothers, right?
Yeah, yeah, they went insane because they were given something, but they just had no idea how to use it. So in World War II, it was still there. It was just one craft. It was still there, and then a couple of scientists came over, said that it was brought. Well, there's a couple of these scientists came forward and said this that worked on actually on the nuclear weapon with us, and came forward and said yes, it was here. That it was brought to Area 51. And what it sounds like is somewhere along the line, the humans got hold to the Greys and said, look, can you at least show us how to fly the damn thing so we can understand? Because they couldn't even get it to start. It just sat there like a big brick. And somehow they got them to do it. So if the story is true, there were 4 humans and 3 Greys on board this craft. Something went wrong because the Greys meld with their crafts. It's like they melt into them or something. So the way they control them is all definitely mental. So they were trying to teach the humans how to do this. And humans must have lost control, accelerated out of control. Well, we know whatever went down on Mac Brazel's ranch was not an interstellar craft because it broke up into pieces. They found
Mhm.
what looked like aircraft aluminum, fiber optics. This was probably either a shuttlecraft or an escape pod, more than likely. We know in Corona, Arizona, and Corona, New Mexico, is where the main craft came down. That's where it was retrieved from when it came down. It was a big craft. It hit the ground, made a big impact, and a, a, a 3 Boy Scouts, the father and 2 scouts walked up on it. They said, sitting outside the craft, what looked to be 4 human bodies that were glowing pinkish and looked like they were just decaying and melting, like they were exposed to some high radiation. What was weird about that is a week later, the husband, the wife, and the 2 kids were killed in a car accident. I mean, just 18-wheeler just smashed them into nothing. made it hard not to think they weren't telling us the truth. And so
Mm-hmm.
then that was it. Then they always talked about Roswell. They never talked about Corona, even though Corona is listed. They always talked about Roswell because that's where the graves were. Well, that craft was crap, and we probably got stuff from that because they was it the Roswell cassette showed what looked to be a microchip. Well, a microchip like we have today, but you could barely see it.
Yeah,
It had
that's
more
that's
like a
that's basically what Corso said. In fact, it looks
yeah.
like a microchip that was a precursor to what we have today. It
Yeah,
sounds like the stuff we have today is even more advanced.
it probably is because this thing, whatever this thing was on this little scout chip or whatever this was, probably
Mm-hmm.
nothing real advanced. They had fiber optics on board, and they had what we would consider some type of aircraft aluminum because the bridge bars and the crossbars were all so light and so thing, and then they had and some of the aluminum would just you'd fold it all up and let it go. It would go back. We have that today.
Yeah,
We didn't have
memory
it
metal.
back then.
Right.
Yeah, we didn't have it back then, but we have it today, and it's probably all came from that crash. It's probably what we got from and it took us 50, 60 years to even backwards engineer, but we did well as much as we could. I mean, it looked like because you know what's funny about this, the computer age could be a fluke. We might not have supposed to have had this
Mm-hmm.
without that craft. We may not have had a computer age. We might still be doing things a whole different way today. So in a way, they directly interfered in our society, or at least lifted and moved our society forward in a way that maybe they wouldn't even think was going to
Yeah, I
happen.
mean
So
it's why they might have pushed us toward AI,
yeah.
and maybe
And they may
AI was
also
the
be babysitting
destination.
us because they did that. They may be saying, you know what, we're gonna have to keep an eye on these freaking humans for case they get into deep space or something. Because between things like the fuels we just listed and the types of chips we're talking about, and the chips today are seriously advanced. I mean, I'm gonna tell you a little secret. When I was in the Navy, we were running 8 cores. Okay, so just think of what they're running in the Navy now. So yeah, think about that. And we didn't fix motherboards. We took them out, threw them in the ocean, and replaced them with another one. Well, we didn't throw them in the ocean. They had an incinerator for them. They never even
Yeah, I was
repaired
gonna
them. They
say,
just
there's no way
incinerated.
you threw those
No,
in
no,
the
we didn't throw
ocean.
them in the ocean. We
You
had
have
actually
Russian
had an.
subs following you everywhere you
You
go.
know it, dude. Every night they would die. No, they actually
Yeah.
had an incinerator on board. Everything got incinerated. That didn't go. They because well, I was bitching one time. I was working my first like 2 weeks in Nimitz, and I said, they said go out and change them 3 resistors, and it was like my first 6 months, and I was like, change resistors, what? And I went out there and I looked at it and I seen how the board was set. So I just pulled the board and went and got it done. I said, what are you doing? I said, well, why are we changing resistors? Because you never know when you change a resistor or any diode or anything. If it's not perfect, you just put this jet in jeopardy. Well, these are coming off a manufacturer's line. You know it's perfect. So my commander said, well, that's what we'll do. And I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden I know that's all we were doing anymore. And it was great. All of a sudden we seen stacks of little boards all over the place with different things. And I think in the beginning they didn't want to do it because they were scared the boards might fall in somebody's hands. But this way it was guaranteed. Plus the turnaround is so much faster. If I got to get out there and solder something and take it apart and put it back together, it takes time. Changing the board is usually like 4 screws, a couple of plugs, bloop, 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 and it's done and over with. It's so it makes it way faster. But I enjoy it. And all of these people, Lazar and a whole bunch of whistleblowers are just tough because I figure if it's a true whistleblower with something real, the government will just take them out. Unless the government wants
Yeah.
them out there, the government will just take them. I mean, I've been threatened so many times. I mean, I've told the
Yeah, like
story
you take
where,
Rush. Like they want him to say what he's saying,
no, oh yeah,
right?
he's a fraud. So
Well,
I
I don't know if
always
he's a
said,
fraud, but
well,
I
I
think
see.
he's saying
I
what they
did.
want
I
him to
did the
say.
polygraph thing when they asked me. He didn't. So that's the thing.
So someone explained that to me. So I asked about that, and there are some security agreements that you sign that prohibit you from taking polygraphs. So in other words, if somebody,
That is
you
true,
got,
unless you're giving
yeah.
testimony to Congress, and then none of that applies. So there are lots of agreements where you can't do that, like with Quantico FBI agents and stuff like that. Because one of my friends is a.
Well, they could have forced him, right? And they didn't force him, which is
Well, it's not even
that
that.
raises a
It
whole
wasn't
set
even
of
that. He should have
questions.
volunteered. That's what I did. He should have volunteered. I just volunteered. He should have volunteered.
Yeah.
He said, okay. And he should have said, okay, we'll do a list of questions that you can go across. You can't go over here because of my agreement with whatever alphabet agency he worked for. But right off the bat, you never take testimony from anybody working in the alphabet ad because they're lying. They never come forward without an agenda ever. Besides, did you not see the 3 pilots looking at him like, God? All 3 of them said he was
Well, he
alive.
was talking about interdimensionals and like
Well,
all
it's not even
sorts
that.
of
Think
stuff.
about this.
Yeah.
So he's saying these things come through this gate and they just fall out and crash, and we get to ships. and thing. So right now we should have like a fleet of like 300-400 flying saucers. We should have 1,000 of grays. No, that's not. They'd come get them. Plus, somewhere along the line, they would just stop sending them. If they weren't hearing back from them, they'd stop sending them. And then you've got the other aliens. It's not unexplained reptilians or the humans on the planet. And what the bitch part is, this has been going on for thousands of years. So that means there would be tens of thousands of spacecrafts. Where are they?
Well, if you listen to the Lazar story again, we have to acknowledge whether we don't know if that's true or not. But if you listen to the Lazar story, he claims that one of the craft that he worked on or read about was from an archaeological dig.
It's possible. I wouldn't even rule that out. Things in the past. The Greys may have landed and parked it and got killed somewhere. See, that's what people are saying. Taking one of their craft down, nothing we have is going to even touch them. We don't have anything that can penetrate the skin. They talked about the one in Roswell. There's nothing. There's not even high plasma won't even scratch it. You have to remember these things are flying through deep space at high speeds where micromediates could turn them to dust, and being exposed to radiation and plasma that, frankly, would turn anything we have to jelly. So we know this, and we know according to them where they're coming from. And before anybody asks either one of us, don't ever rule out dimensional anything. So we know the Greys do this for sure. The Greys. So I'm going to tell you, I don't run out of time, but I'll tell you a real quick thing. So the Greys and all the aliens reacted to the abduction researchers. So missing time has become a thing in the past. Most of the time today, it's either gain time or the same time. They either put you back at the same time they took you, or you gain a few minutes. There is no more missing time. Plus, they don't do cover memories anymore. They do looped memories. And we found all this out by accident. But so let's say Sean once a week has his favorite hot dog, or twice a week, or on the way to work, he stops every day and gets a cup of, whatever he might drink. So they use that. So they take you, and instead of trying to put some funky ass memory in there, they just put you stopping at Starbucks on your morning. So, and as far as your brain is concerned, that's all that happened. You went to Starbucks, you had a drink, that was it. The way they screw up is sometimes they might put you back before you left, or they leave little stupid things out of sync sometimes. So one of the ways, so this is how we found the first one. The lady went to work every day, stopped out and got this nasty, she was pregnant, stopped and got this nasty chili jog every morning. Her daughter said, I used to bitch at her every day about, Mom, what are you doing? The kid's going to have a craving for dogs when he's born. So she gets something happen. And the next morning she remembers this, stopping that morning and getting a hot dog. Well, this was like a year after, she wasn't pregnant anymore and the place was closed. And she calls me and said, what the hell is that, Joe? She said, what is that? So then we get this other case from Pensacola, Florida. A couple goes down the beach. And this is what's great about this case. It's so well documented. We have pictures of their car at the hotel where they stayed. Okay. At what was it? At 10 o'clock. And then you see them leaving at like 15 minutes to 11. They drive, and it's not far. They stop at the 7-Eleven. Two women work at shift change. So they remember this couple, and they were talking, chatting. So it's 11 o'clock. They leave there, and they go out to the beach on Navarre Beach and hang out. So a couple of days later, they find a ticket wedged in between their seats from the local PD for 10:10 p.m. Could have been wrong, right? Call the police department. The dispatcher and the cop clearly says, no, it was 10:10 p.m. That car that was at that hotel was also on that beach at 10:10 p.m. How can that happen? How can that even be possible? Well, there's a camera on that corner. So you see the car at 11 go down the street. When you look from the gazebo, that car is there at 10:10 p.m. But yet it's still at the freaking hotel at 10:10 p.m. How's that possible? So what happened is the aliens set them back early. They took them at 11 and set them back at 10. And they didn't realize that they just went on their night, they didn't think about it, just went on their night doing whatever, and if they wouldn't have found that ticket, they would have never known. So, and then since then we've been able to authenticate several other cases where the time was screwed with. It wasn't so much missing time, it was just screwed with time. And so what happened is we realized that the aliens have learned that we track them through missing time and by memories. So they said, screw this, watch this, researchers, try to figure this one out. So they started looping memories. I can't tell you, we've broke lots of loop memories now, but it's man, that was slick. I mean, that was slick. And that was only because of us. I'm not taking credit for it, it's because of all the researchers out there that was doing research. Today, you rarely see missing time. You rarely find someone who's been programmed. And this is another thing. People used to get so mad at me about this. I saw an owl. Well, that's a cover me. I did this. That's a cover me. No, people. I saw a UFO. It's a cover me. No, bullshit. Those are trigger memories. That's to let your dumb ass know something just happened to you. I saw a 6-foot owl standing in the middle of the street. Oh, yeah. Well, that's not real. You might see a 4-foot owl standing in the middle of the street, but it's there. Or I seen these weird deers that had these glowing red eyes. No, these are trigger memories. This is to let you know something just happened to you. And they only give these to people who they think want to be part of the show, that may help out or become keepers or something like that. But they're not cover memories, they're trigger memories. And when we learned that, it changed the way we looked at this stuff. It made us realize that we have a contactee in our hands. We need to see what's going on with them. So we learned, they learned, but I was surprised to realize that they reacted to the contactees. Which tells me that they're paying attention to what the hell we're doing.
Joe, I told you about my owl story, right?
No, I don't think you did. Tell me.
It's just a normal owl, just an owl, just a normal owl, right? But there was one on my back gate, and I was able to walk up to it like 5 feet. I have 1,000 photos of it. So, but it was just weird. Like when does
See, that
an
could be a
owl
trigger
land on
memory.
your back?
See,
Yeah, it was just
that could
weird.
be, see that thing. So that could be a trigger memory. So what you do is you have somebody hypnotized to walk from your house to where it's at. And then, so what'll happen is if it's a true thing, then there'll be clean. You won't feel any weirdness when you're being hypnotized. It'll
Yeah,
be,
it could have just been an owl, just like a normal owl.
yeah, and
I
it
mean
could be
that's what it
just
was.
normal
But
out.
yeah,
So you never know about these kind of things. So I was driving through Honey Island Swamp one night, which is full of owls and everything else. And my wife's always weird out how I can see things out in the woods, like this big owl sitting on a string. And I back. She said, no, I backed up and I showed it to her. She said, oh, that could be. I said, no, that's actually a real owl. It's just doing its thing. But we get so many of these cover memories. Um, it's just anytime they take you, if they think in which someone like you, they would probably think, okay, he could be useful, or he could be part of this. Those people they leave trigger memories for because they want you to think about it. So if they didn't want you to think about it, they'd just wipe the memory or give you the loop memory, and you'll never think about it ever. There's nothing to think
hmm
about. But if they leave you something to think about, then you're going to work it through your head, and eventually it's going to start coming out in your dreams, and you're going to find someone like me or someone else, and you're going to be able to pull this out and realize what happened to you, and then you can decide, do I want to help you? So many of these contactees become keepers because they want to work with the children or the people in their 20s. Because from puberty to about 28 is when all the nasty stuff happens in abductions. Before, if you ask children, they laugh. Oh, my friend the reptilian, my friend the gray. They just think it's they're. And then if you go after 30, those people are still being taken because a lot of them are not being taken anymore, are usually becoming part of this, either lecturing and touring or helping other people or becoming keepers or helping children. They become part of this. So the Greys and all the other aliens really want humans there because it's easier for them if the contactee wakes up and sees a human standing next to him instead of a freaking 9-foot reptilian. It's a little bit easier to cope with. And when the reptilians walk up, they say, "Well, no, it's okay. That you're not going to feel anything. This is how it's going to be. Don't worry about it. Blah 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 blah." And then, of course, it's much easier for them. And then when it's over with, when they're being taken back and they're put in whatever you call it, the green room or something, and they're coming back out, it's also nice to have another human there. And if they're useful, they may be taken on the big ships where they get to meet other humans and other people. When they talk about some of the ships in orbit or sitting out in our solar system, it's hard to even believe this stuff. But so many people have seen them, it's hard not to believe it. So it just sounds like communities where, because the Greys have the ability to pull you out of time. So they'll
hmm
take you. So with Jim Sparks, he'd be missing for 3-4 weeks, but he didn't know it. And when he came home, they would put him back at the time he took him. So none of his family members. So he didn't believe me. I said, so we're going to talk. I said, we're going to talk tonight. I'm going to hypnotize you while we're talking. So we're talking and I'm getting him under and he's like, he starts remembering day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. He said, well, wait, I wasn't gone that long. I said, oh, obviously you were day 4, day 5. And we did this for a lot of people. It taught them something. It taught us something. They can pull us out of time and space without leaving anything behind here. Nobody knows. And then away you go for however long they want to keep you. And when they're done with you, they just put you back basically at the time they took you, right after, right
So
before.
so what are they
It's
doing
crazy.
with people? Like what? Like, given your research, what are the
Well, for
theories do you
the
have?
puberty through 28, that's just more
hmm
research about what the human mind, human body can understand and handle, and it can be quite rough on most people. After that, that's not what they're doing. They're really they're really trying to help us to understand what we are and who we are. So basically, when you're talking to like a gray and the gray's got you there, the reptilians like to take you to this dome bubble city. I think it's inside of a ship or it might be somewhere else. And they got these bubbles all over, these little round things you put your hand on, and it gives you an education of who they are, where they are. So they override the human brain. All three of them have an ability. So I guess it's what you'd call like Sean's file. When you get ready to leave to come home, whatever's over that you're not supposed to have or whatever you're not supposed to access, it just automatically uploads to the craft and it stays there. Anytime you're there, it comes, you can access it. So you don't even have to keep it in your head. It's just like an extension. It's like a 100 gig hard drive extension or somewhere, a terabyte extension to keep it out of your brain. It's really what it is. And we also know they do downloads. They want us moving along a certain way. I think they're really hoping that the contactee core, the people who they are trying to change, will somewhere along the line nurse this planet back to a different direction. Because in a ways, we were getting there. For a while there, there was no wars going on the planet. We'd ended all the wars. Everybody was behaving. And here comes Putin, and then here comes Hamas. It's just like, so I think they're hoping that maybe someone in that group, whatever country they come from, might stand up one day and be the leaders that we're looking for, have the abilities that they can do. Because if you're a really good empath or telepath and you get on a stage, you can really work a crowd. You can work anybody watching you on TV that way, because you're sending out, these people are kind of being absorbed by it, so they could change the world. It's just right now, we're in deep shit was what we are right now. But we were in deep shit whenever they blew up the Twin Towers. So I have faith. But aliens, and here on a short note, people ask me all the time, well, they stop us in a nuclear war. They didn't keep Hiroshima and Nagasaki from being blown up. They didn't stop 3 Mile Island. They didn't stop Chernobyl, and they didn't stop Fukushima. So that would be a big fat no. They've also been to several nuclear facilities since the 60s on up to let them know that your nuke weapons are no threat to us. And now they might even not be a threat to us or Russia, because Russia's been knocking our missiles out of the sky with electronic warfare devices now. They just knocked another 2 out yesterday. So the world may be changing even more. All I can hope is somebody invents a way to knock nukes out of the sky. We don't have to worry about it anymore. It'll become ineffective. We as a people just need to pay attention sometimes what the contactees are saying. And most of them are saying peace, love, and light, or peace, love, and laughter. That's what most of them are telling you. Look, come back. We're all the same people. And when, that's one of the things I love about the internet and what the world is learning if you have internet is, guess what? The politicians might suck, but the rest of us are just everyday people trying to get ahead, trying to feed our family, trying to make friends, trying to keep from getting blown up. And so more and more and more of us are learning that, which is really making the life of the world change. Eventually, there'll come a point where the world just won't tolerate this kind of crap anymore. But when that's going to be, maybe when Sean's kids are when he's a great grandpa, Oh, and don't forget, Masters and Johnson came up with the way to turn off your telomeres. I don't know if they're going to make it public or not, or release it or not. So telomeres.
So in other words, you don't age. You don't age anymore. Age.
Right. See, Sean knew exactly what telomeres were. So then they think they can even turn them back 20 years, which when I hear it's going to be extremely painful. So will they ever release this technology? This is fact. People, they've talked about it. They've been scientific studies on it. I knew sooner or later someone was going to learn how to turn that off. And guess what? Right now, it's going like everything does to the rich people. And eventually it'll trickle down to us. Give it time. Give it time.
Well, I mean, we're also kind of on the verge of a population decline, right?
Yeah, we are actually.
If you look at the number of people, right? I mean, we're not declining yet, but like China's declining.
It's interesting. You said that China's definitely on a decline. Looks like India might be on a decline soon. America's headed that way. Where are we at? 1.55. I think it's 1.55 live and 1.45 are dying. I don't know. It's real close to each other, but people, they track that stuff, and it's the world, the planet's changing, and don't forget this. Don't be praying to Gaia because you ain't from this planet. Gaia's probably going, shut up, you dumb human. Go back to your planet. I tell my New Age friends all the time that they're like, Joe, that's wrong. I said, no, you're praying to the wrong guy. Maybe the guy you should be praying to is a Mars. Maybe you'll get more done that way. I don't know, people, but the telomere thing.
Pray to Aries. Right.
Yeah, it's a very interesting. Yeah, the war god. Well, Elon. Oh, here So a guy in 1953 wrote a thing, and they said the guy is named Elon, That's his. This is the writing. It's a fact writing. You can find it. And that one day he would be declaimed the self-emperor of Mars. That's what the guy wrote in 1953. So I
Elon?
guess sometimes you can tell the future. Well, I keep telling y'all, I keep telling everybody, he reminds me of the guy from Moonraker. He's brilliant, changing the world, and then one day he's going to move to Mars and then nuke the whole planet until he can come back and clean it up. Then he'll have 2 planets. But he's not a young man either, guys. He better get on the roll. He's what? 50, well, he might get to tell him a drug, and then he can do whatever he wants. And he said he's going to have another 10 kids, so he has 20 kids when he goes to Mars. Leave 10 here and take 10 there. I was like, what the hell? I love Elon, guys. If he was a girl, I'd marry him. But he's. I just don't know if he's this. He loves America. I was surprised because he's from South Africa. He's the richest. He's the richest African American in the world, and all my black friends hate when I say that, but it's true. He is the richest African American in the world because he's from Africa and he's an American. But is he really on our side? That's a question. The other day he gave a big bitch about why aren't we getting the TR-3Bs to fly around? He found out they were real. I found out a long time ago they were real. He just recently found out they were real.
Elon did?
Yeah, he's pissing.
When?
He was. I don't know. He's bitching about 3 days ago, and then somebody. I ain't heard nothing from him. So somebody told him to shut the bleep up. According to the Russians, we had these since 1979, and we actually offered the Russians a ride to Mars to establish a base. And they said we've been running them back and forth. What's his name? Alfred Weber, who was Jimmy Carter's science advisor, also said that. He said we've been running missions with these things back and forth. He said that's what they were actually designed for, to establish a colony on Mars to help educate our elite that are going to be presidents. I said, sometimes this shit gets too much for me. I'm just saying, sometimes. Oh, yeah, Barack Obama was supposed to be there. Jimmy Carter was supposed to be there. Actually, they must have effed up on both these guys. Wait, Trump probably wasn't there. He was probably just a fluke. I'm just saying.
Well, if they had it, they didn't tell him about it.
It's I don't know. It's weird when you hear stories like these. But these guys are high up when they say stuff like, it's like when I was having lunch with Edgar Mitchell.
Well, some of it might be
Alder.
complete BS too, right? Like remember that Annie Jacobson with the handicapped children that Stalin flew over to Roswell and crashed. Like, come on, Annie. You got to know better than that. That's
unfortunately,
like one source. Right.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of lies that get out there and a lot of lies you can't deal with. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. He's going on about this conspiracy. I'm like, dude, stop. It's a conspiracy. But Joe, sometimes the conspiracies are right. I said, I know that. I have several conspiracy people on my network, and they tell me all the time what's going on. And when I see like 4 or 5 of them tell me the same thing, I'm like, oh, shit, this is probably right. But when each one's telling me something different, I know it's bullshit. Well, that's a whole.
Yeah, Alex Jones gets them more right than, he just says it in crazy ways, and people are like, "Wait, what?"
He's like Trump in a way that he needs to just learn how to change the way he speaks to people. It's not that he's not.
He's hilarious. He's just hilarious, and nobody takes him seriously.
And I see Joe Rogan's trying to go that way. Right. He has been right, and I see Joe Rogan's been doing a lot of that too. But they both have big audiences. People want to hear it. People want to hear the stuff that's going on. It's some of that stuff, like there was just a lot of stuff that was just BS, people, and that's the problem. It's always been the problem. So I proved this to a friend.
Yeah, his whole Sandy Hook thing was just abhorrent, right?
That was
the
just
reaction to it was
crazy.
even worse.
Yeah, so I don't even know why they thought that, but I proved this to a friend of mine. I said, watch, I'm going to post 200 pictures of UFOs, which are all real, and I'm going to post one hoax. First off, no one could find the hoax. But when I finally posted the hoax where they could see it, that's the only thing anyone ever talked about ever again. They didn't give a shit about the 199 really good UFO shots that were taken by pilots and all kind of interesting people. They only remembered the hoax. And it's the same thing with these damn conspiracies. You prove like a Kennedy one or something like that, and they don't. After that, they only want to talk about the ones that weren't proven. It's a shame that our country, not just our country, everybody's country tends to run that way. And people tell me, well, we're not like Americans. I said, no, you're like humans. We're all humans. And I said, believe it or not, we all pretty much are the same. We look the same. We sound the same. We have the same blood flowing through our veins. I said, we have the same things. We have to feed ourselves, feed our children, take care of our families. There's just basic things that everyone on this planet does. And sometimes I think they forget, because you watch American here. You go overseas, you're not going to see America like we see America on TV. you're going to see Germany or whatever. So each country, like China, has their news, and it's always tainted good to China, bad to U.S. Maybe Russia has its news. I guarantee you watch Russian news right now, and they're talking about America. You'd be pissed if you seen it. So I mean, it's unfortunate we can't be honest with each other, and it's not that all of them are even lying. It's just as a society, we have to get united. We have to become one society. I'm not a big one worlder. I'm not going to lie to y'all, but in the end, I don't think we're going to get anywhere like this. I think somewhere along the line, we're going to have to get together as one group and start. If we're going to explore the galaxy for real and our solar system for real, we got to join together, or it's going to be a mess. We'll be fighting over resources, blowing stuff up. It just won't be fun.
All right, Joe. I think those are great for final words. So,
Sleep well, people. Call Michelle.
Yeah.
Say
So
Sean
sleep.
said call Michelle. Good.
You just give everybody her phone number right now. You just put it.
Well, yeah. Look, if y'all want anything, just write to ICAR@Cox. ICAR@Cox. That's the best way to get hold of me. And of course, you can join us on UFO on the Cover on Wednesdays. I do Science and Beyond sometimes on Mondays. Friday night, Sean and a bunch of other people are going to be. Oh, and by the way, if you're familiar with who Orson Scott Card is, he's going to join us in some of the Friday night shows. So be sure to come by and see how we eat conspiracies for lunch on that show. Anyway, good night.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you, Joe. It was a pleasure.